letting people pay taxes in Bitcoin. Isn't that risky? And tell me, how would that work?
Obviously, anytime you invest in anything, of course it's risky. Absolutely no obligation whatsoever for any of our employees to do that. In terms of the investment part, we invest in a variety of different commodities, whether they be, sugar, pork bellies, whatever the commodity may be.
Well, sure, but none of those other commodities fluctuate 10, 20% in a day the way Bitcoin does.
That's why it's something that we're studying, not necessarily something we're jumping right into.
I want to read you something that Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said. Bitcoin is an extremely inefficient way of conducting transactions and is a highly speculative asset. I mean, so when you hear that from the Treasury Secretary, doesn't that make you think twice?
It doesn't surprise me at all that a Treasury Secretary would find a decentralized potential currency to be hostile to a currency that they control. For people who invest in Bitcoin, the allure is precisely that it's not backed by a central government, so it's not manipulatable by a central government.
You're talking about investing government resources in this completely decentralized resource, which scares people a bit.
Does it scare you? I guess it scares you.
I don't live here.
Okay, well, I guess it scares you.
It doesn't scare you.
I think it's something worth studying. I think it's something worth studying and worth looking at.
Happy Bitcoin Tuesday, freaks. And we're here for another week of Citadel Dispatch, the interactive live show about Bitcoin distributed systems, privacy, and open source software. I'm your host, Matt Odell. Big welcome to all the freaks joining us here for another Bitcoin Tuesday. That clip was Mayor Frances Suarez of Miami calling out Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen for frankly being scared of better money. It appears that the Bitcoin deniers are transitioning to a new narrative where the only way they can protect their shitty money is to prevent Americans from having the choice and the freedom to choose which money they want to do, which is just really telling if I'm going to be frank about it. I'm excited that this week we are joined by James O'Byrne at James OB. And our good friend, Evan Kaludis, who this is the first three-peat on the podcast, joining us for the third time. James is the lead maintainer of Cold Core. He's also a Bitcoin Core developer and has experience in open source dev across the board. Evan, you guys know Evan well. He is the lead maintainer of Zeus Lightning Wallet. They're both former New York Bitcoiners alongside me. This time last year, or maybe a little bit earlier than this time last year, we were partying in New York City, and today we are separated across the world. So it is very exciting to have them both back here for today's show. Since Evan has been here before, let's start off with James. James, how's it going?
Matt, great to be here, man. Thanks for having me on. And Evan, congratulations on the hat trick. It's a big deal.
Thanks a lot, James. Just glad to be sitting down with you. It's gonna be a fun one today.
Yeah, man, absolutely. So let me kick things off with the ceremonial opening of the India Pale Hard Seltzer here. Get started. Man, I'm just amazed that the interviewer there in that clip cites Janet Yellen as being any sort of authority, because if you look at her previous comments on like the housing crisis of 2007, or the fact that the Fed's balance sheet roll-off is going to be like watching paint dry, or I think maybe a year or two ago, she said something along the lines of there will never be another financial crisis again. It seems like Janet is her own contraindicator. So if she's saying that Bitcoin's dangerous, then I think it's safe to go the other direction.
Yeah, so I mean, that was the host who was speaking was, I guess, that's HBO's new news show in partnership with Axios. I guess they got into a fight with Vice, so now they have an Axios series. I mean, I thought it was interesting, the whole like little discourse back and forth about being scared. Like he asked Francis if he was scared, and then he kind of, you know, he kind of made it seem like he was scared, and then Francis was like, "Are you scared?" And then he was like, "Well, I don't live here." But like we've seen time and time again, and we will see with these Bitcoin deniers that they don't care if they live in the area where they want you to deny Bitcoin. You know,
Right.
they didn't care if U.S. users are actually using something for them to try and stop people's freedom to choose or freedom of privacy, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Evan, thank you for joining us for a third time.
Yep. You know what they say, Matt? Third time's a charm. Yeah, I'm just really glad to be a part of this show and have the opportunity to just chat with, you know, great people in the space like James.
Fuck
So,
yes.
yeah, great topics today. I'm looking forward to diving into. But yeah, it was a really prudent clip up front with the Miami mayor. I just loved his attitude. You know, growth starts at the edge of your comfort zones, and you know, a lot of people getting into Bitcoin right now are going to learn that. So more the merrier. Just bring them on. There's nothing to fear, freaks.
I mean, talking about Citadels, I mean, what was it? Was it like a year and a half ago that we were doing the Citadel workshops together with James there in New York City, in person, no masks? It's pretty crazy how time flies.
That was a riot, and we never saw any of this coming. I would have, I would have cherished those events that much more if I had known it was going to be, you know, a delay of at least a year before I got to hang with you guys again.
Well, fear not, it won't be the last. So we'll get back to in-person chilling soon enough. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Before we get started, I just did want to do a quick shout out to the Bitcoin 2021 conference in Miami in June. The freaks that have been here in the past and are joining us through the podcast feed are aware that I am trying to my best to help them throw a good party in June. I think Bitcoin will be pumping in price. They gave me my own unique code where I negotiated a better rate because I didn't want any kind of, I don't believe in like ref links or anything. So I just wanted all of it to go to the discount code. So they gave me 21%, and you freaks have just been demolishing this code. The code is humble, all caps. They are going to cut me off. They told me on Friday they're cutting off my 21% discount. So if you are going to do it, you should probably do it before then. Or you can wait for number to go up because then the price will go down that way. And then one other thing I just wanted to add is this is broadcast via Twitch, YouTube, and Twitter. We have freaks joining us from all three of those things. It is important to realize that YouTube automatically cuts out the end of my show every week because of copyright, and I kind of deserve that. It isn't cut off from Twitch. It isn't cut off from Twitter. If you go to citadeldispatch.com, I also have archives on Keybase and Telegram where you can download the full video file or the full audio file. There's also 2 podcast feeds. You can either listen to it on the TFTC podcast feed or the dedicated Citadel Dispatch feed. If you just search Tales from the Crypt or Citadel Dispatch on your podcast app of choice.
Hey, Matt.
Yes, go on.
Would you recommend taking out a Bitcoin collateralized loan to pay for your Bitcoin 2021 ticket?
No, I would not.
Okay.
I think
as my registered financial advisor.
This is not financial advice. I mean, I think that, you should just spend Bitcoin within your means. I think people shouldn't be taking out leverage on Bitcoin. And on that topic, we do like to get technical in here, but let's be honest. A lot of the freaks, a lot of the listeners like talking about price. They like talking about number go up. If you're watching this live, you have our usual chart is being live streamed out to you. On the top is the Evil Empire Coinbase. On the bottom is BISC, the proper no KYC P2P exchange. So keep an eye on that as we go. But on that topic, James, in March, when everything was going crazy, you decided that you wanted to be a trader. Do you want to reflect on this for the freaks? And, have you reformed in your ways? Do you think stacking is the way to go? Should people try and time markets? What's your thoughts here?
Yeah, I guess it's time for a formalized public atonement and or lashing for my transgressions earlier in 2020. Basically, I saw what was going on. I saw the pandemic coming, and I guess called it in the grand scheme of things relatively early, like pretty much anybody else who was kind of paying attention to the usual alternative sources on Twitter, I guess. And had some early success, like shorting corporate debt. Had some success going long euro-dollar futures, which is basically just a way of betting that interest rates short term are going to drop, towards zero, which they did. So I was kind of emboldened by that stuff to, trade more. And I thought that basically at that stage in the game, that Bitcoin was essentially just beta on the stock market, and the stock market was seemingly obviously going down. And so I thought, I'll sell some Bitcoin and then scoop it when it, hits some lower level, and, up my Bitcoin holdings. And in the meantime, I was kind of like diversifying into gold, which everybody will laugh at me for, and rightfully so. Because I basically, it was, again, it's one of these like disgusting decisions where you're like banking on the way that other people perceive the world. And I kind of thought, okay, the markets are entering this calamitous state, and people are going to be rushing towards, a Bitcoin equivalent, whether they know it or not. Some people are going to, ultimately rush towards Bitcoin, but basically anybody over the age of like 55 just doesn't seem to understand Bitcoin. I'm sure there are people out there, but in any case, my bet was basically that older people were going to look at gold as a kind of safe haven asset. And so I was like, okay, well, maybe I should own some of this. And that in nominal terms wasn't a mistake. I did make a return on that, but definitely not nearly what I would have made if I just left my my money in Bitcoin.
Did I just hear you price your return in US dollars instead of cash? Is that what you just said?
Yeah, that's another transgression. I guess I haven't worked all the kinks out yet, but yeah, as SM was saying there, I used to write, or I wrote a few issues of this this newsletter, Bear House, which is me just kind of talking about the markets and like openly talking about how much money I was either losing or making. And the final kind of installment of that was me having this come to Jesus moment where I was like, I don't believe in any of this bullshit aside from Bitcoin. So why am I screwing around? And the price, I think at that point was like $9,000. And so I had made some stupid sales earlier around $6,000. And so I basically just kind of like margin called myself back into Bitcoin, both, literally and spiritually, because it was like, whoa, what are you doing here, man? And I chalk all that up honestly. And here's like the big danger for Bitcoiners. I think a lot of us are driven by novelty to a certain extent, and we get contrarian and we get bored. And I think that's kind of what happened to me, is that I was like, I've been absorbed in Bitcoin for the last, 3 or 4 years, professionally, personally. And I think I just kind of started to fidget, and subsequently, made some bad decisions. But yeah, that was an experience for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when it was happening clear as day. I was like, James. The one thing I would add is
you should have grabbed me by the collars and started to shake.
I know we were telling you last year, but yeah, we honestly should have shook you.
I was trolling you on Twitter, which is more effective, to be honest. And it was before Have Fun Staying Poor. I remember I posted a video of cooking bear fat and eating bear meat and bear fat, and I alluded that it was you. I think a key thing that you did, which I will commend you for, is that you took the loss and you admitted your mistake and you fucking just bought back in. And at the time, it was like the difference between $6,000 and $9,000 Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people would be like, oh, I missed it on the 30% swing, and wouldn't have the humility to come back in. But you had the humility to come back in, and you look now like what's the difference between 6K and 9K? It's fucking negligible.
Right. Well, I mean, I'm not a moron, and I'm a Bitcoiner for life. So, I mean, this, we're kind of, it's not like I sold out my whole stash or anything. This was a sort of like marginal amount, but I think, my rhetoric was maybe stronger at the time than it
very provocative,
certainly. And again, that's kind of the contrarianism and the boredom kicking in.
Well, what you really missed, right? What you missed is you didn't expect them to print as hard and as fast as they fucking did.
Well, and that's kind of the irony of it, is that like in my the single piece of writing I've churned out that's probably going to stand the test of time, which is Bitcoin for Safety. I basically outlined exactly what was going to happen and what did happen, and I didn't heed my own advice. So like the joke is on me, because it was all in there, and they printed hard. And I basically just thought that the transmission dynamics in the monetary system weren't going to sort of translate, the Fed purchasing bonds into a saving of the corporate debt market. But instead, what happened in actuality is the Fed opened a special purpose vehicle, and they went out and started buying corporate debt hand over fist. And I think that's the thing that nobody really counted on, and is almost certainly a violation of the Federal Reserve Act. But as if that holds anymore.
James, I wanted you to get into your experience with the gold. I think the parts of that you detailed. I mean, first of all, hats off to detailing pretty much all your moves like this online and on your blog. That was really cool of you. But I was almost most interested by your tweet thread detailing your headaches with offloading your gold when you decided to sell it.
Yeah, that was a really interesting experience, and it was kind of coincidental because as Bitcoin's price movement started, and it became clear to me that this year was going to be an absolutely insane year. I just had to dump the gold, and in the process of dumping the gold, the difficulty inherent in that was like the ultimate verification that is the right move. Because so basically the way that it worked is it was like maybe a Wednesday, and I wanted to sell the gold, so I called up AppMex, spoke to some woman, and we like kind of haggled. AppMex is it's they're a gold dealer. They're one of the bigger ones, appmex.com. I don't have any affiliation with them, but I just happen to know that they buy gold, and so I'm sure you can do that locally, but I didn't really want to futz around with that. So I called them up and talked to some saleswoman. We spend like 30 minutes kind of doing this dance over like, well, how much gold do I have? And like, what kind of bars are they? And, like doing some price haggling. And so then we finally finalized on price. She has me sign some paperwork, I think, with my social on it. Then the next day she sends me, okay, so this is already over like 16 hours, right? If you were selling Bitcoin, you would be, you'd have your wire transfer like processing at this point. I'm just now signing paperwork. So basically, if you sell a certain amount of gold, you have to split it into separate packages, and you have to double box it with double labeling. And so this woman sends me 2 shipping labels, which I print out into a total of 4 labels, double box everything, pack it up. I have to like go out and get packaging materials and stuff. And all the while I'm kind of sketched out by like the prospect of, physically bringing this stuff into the UPS store and potentially handing it over. So I get it all packaged up. I go to the UPS store. I hand it over to the woman there, and walk out. And at that point, it's like, okay, the gold has just sort of entered the ether. It's in UPS's custody, and I sure hope nothing happens to it, because ultimately I'm going to be the one with the loss, and it'll be on me to go appeal to UPS or whatever insurance company to actually get reimbursed for that. So finally, the gold winds up at AppMex. They receive the delivery the next week. I think it takes like 2 days for that to happen. But then they've got to like unpack the gold and inspect it and verify it. And then there was some other little miscellaneous like hiccup where told there was a problem with the order, but there wasn't actually a problem. So long story short, like then they, dispatched the wire like a day later. So long story short, it was like 7 days. It took me 7 days to get paid for this gold that I unloaded. And the whole time I'm just, my jaw's on the floor because I'm like, who the hell is exposing themselves to an asset where like this is what counts for liquidity?
Yeah, the markets there are like completely bonkers, really.
Yeah.
And then as soon as you want gold, right? We saw this during the crisis, during the Corona crisis. As soon as you wanted gold, every single physical dealer locked up. It was like impossible to buy it, even if you wanted to buy it.
Well, yeah, and that speaks to a much more fundamental problem in the gold market. And I did write an article about this following Bitcoin for Safety, which is just about basically the counterparty risk inherent in gold, just because the settlement process is so sort of infeasible. And because settlement is so difficult, you have like this big paper gold market where there's theoretically a lot of allocated gold sitting around in some vault, but that's pretty theoretical at this point. And, it's hard for people to actually take delivery. In certain cases, it's sort of impossible if you're in one of these ETFs. And that just, that allows people to play games with the price. And so you don't really know how rehypothecated the physical gold market is. And that, how can you own something where the whole value is predicated on a scarce supply when you don't really know what the supply is?
Yeah, it's bonkers. No way to do a easy proof of reserves on a gold system. And and just the paper alone just makes it rife for manipulation. And not just the derivatives that could easily be made from it, but even just knowing if the gold is actually where they say it is. There's no accountability in that regard.
No, totally, yeah. And one thing I want to talk about a little bit is that, like, aside from the profitability or whatever, or the quality of the trade of Bitcoin, I got to this point after a few months of focusing on markets and focusing on trading, to realizing that there's a kind of spiritual simplicity or fidelity to just holding Bitcoin, because there are more interesting things to do than play casino or to trade. I guess it's one thing if you're like an applied mathematician and you're modeling some option strategy and you're actually being sort of creative. But I just got to this point where I was kind of disgusted with how I was spending my time. And I felt it was very consumptive to sit there and just watch markets all day. And I found that when your strategy is just buy Bitcoin and hold it until indefinitely, that frees you up to do much more interesting things, like write code or go out and make art, or put together a back-to-back boiler room on Citadel Dispatch, which I think is coming.
Yeah, we gotta make that happen. James, really, you need to come down to Miami for the conference, and let's play an after party there. Give it to the people in person.
Yes, amen.
But we'll organize that for sure. But I totally agree with your sentiments on trading. It's like I don't knock anyone who is actively doing it and making a living doing that, but it's just that I have Bitcoin and I've been inundated enough to go with the dollar cost average strategy. It's just I don't have to waste my time anymore looking at charts, looking at what's going to go and make a run next. Mm-hmm. So my strategy now is proven, and I also get to benefit by not having to put any thought into it anymore. It's just set, and now I get to forget it and focus on my main means of making a living, and then that's programming. So
totally. And at the end of the day, that's the goal of Bitcoin, right? The goal of Bitcoin is partially so that the plumber doesn't have to go out and become a macroeconomist by night just to preserve his value. You can just work and save and focus on the interesting things in life, and not financial engineering in a half-hearted way.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is people may say, whatever, you're 9 to 5, that's the rat race. It's no, it's trying to hold on to the money you earn. That's the rat race. in our society right now. And I think just wanting to escape that rat race is why a lot of people come to Bitcoin and come to our space. So
yeah.
I want to just hold on to this thread and unpack the fuck out of it because I think it's extra important, and people just it's weird to me, and it's a thread that I've been going at recently because so yesterday I had I said on the Peter McCormick podcast, which is something I've said many times, that I expect Monero to trend to zero in terms of Bitcoin long term. And so I had the Monero stands come at me, and they told me that I don't care about privacy because I said that. But if you look at a chart, it literally is trending to zero long term in Bitcoin. And what they don't realize is I believe this for every single fucking asset on this planet. And it's amazing to me that for some people, so I posted the ETH chart last night. Then I went and I posted Apple. Then I posted Facebook. Then I posted BNY Mellon because I just added Bitcoin. I just thought it was funny. And who was the other one? I posted Amazon, all trending to zero. Literally, if you go to strategy.com, which is Michael Saylor's website, ridiculous domain holder, literally every single S&P company in the S&P 500 has worse returns than Bitcoin. If you price their returns in Bitcoin, they're getting clobbered. It's interesting to me how some people understand that concept, can get along on that concept, but then when I tell them Bitcoin's designed to pump forever, I lose them. And then other people, they're like, trend to zero makes no sense because they can't understand the concept that something that's trends to zero doesn't mean it's going to actually hit zero. But I say Bitcoin's designed to pump forever. They're like, oh yeah, I agree. Bitcoin is designed to pump forever. Well, if Bitcoin's designed to pump forever, then everything that it's priced in is going to fucking trend to zero long term. Does anyone in this room disagree with me? I already have Evan on the James, do you disagree with me here? Like long term, no matter what, long term designed to pump forever.
It's designed to pump forever because look, okay, so Bitcoin is the perfect substrate for price, right? Because Bitcoin is the perfect monetary asset because it's portable, it's censorship resistant, it's divisible, it's fungible. It has all the properties of sort of the perfect monetary good. And so, I think it's just a natural consequence that eventually everything's going to be priced in Bitcoin, basically. The question is how long that takes and whether there are fits and starts and delays and stuff like that. But no, yeah, Bitcoin is designed to pump forever. I think, sometimes it's funny because like I have grown a huge respect for some of the more like trolly, outrageous rhetoric, like have fun staying poor, because for a while I fought it, as being sort of unsophisticated or unnuanced. But after a while, you just realize like these things are truths, and they sometimes repel people who are like skeptical, but it's just the damn truth. I mean, yeah, Bitcoin's designed to pump forever. Like that's, if you sit there and think about it for a little while, that is one phrasing of the conclusion that you get out.
I mean, I use the word pump to be provocative, right?
Right.
Like really it's, a truly finite, scarce, deflationary currency is going to increase in purchasing power indefinitely. But that just does not have the kind of ring to it.
Right. No, yeah, you're absolutely right.
So that's awesome. Like a second priority of the show is just getting prominent Bitcoiners to all be on the record that they think Bitcoin's designed to pump forever. So we can check off that. We have James now. He's the first Bitcoin core developer on the record to agree with that statement.
Yeah, I just do what little I can to hang on to any shreds of technical credibility because I feel like I have like mid-tier shit posting on Twitter, and so I try and maintain a semblance of credibility, at least in the GitHub repos.
So before we go on to more topics that are James specific, or that are things that I would really love to discuss with James, there's something that I have to discuss personally, which is BottlePay, a company that I am advising. It came out today that they are allegedly flagging CoinJoin deposits and sending back the user funds if when those deposits get flagged, they send back the user's Bitcoin. I pride myself in my transparency, so obviously I'm here talking about it. I should have advised harder, is what BTC King says. Yes, that is my goal. If you think I'm not continuing to hard advise, you'd be mistaken. There's been a lot of discussion today. They are supposedly going to release a public statement. I was pressured them to get it out quicker. I don't even know what's going on right now because I'm streaming. Hopefully they will have it out soon. Really, I'm curious. I'd like to start off with both of your comments since you are unbiased here, and we'll take it from there.
Yeah, sure thing. Let me kick into it. Yeah, I mean, it's disappointing for sure. You never want to see someone be denied from using a Bitcoin service just because they wanted privacy in doing a coin join or whatever other method. But it's a tricky territory because obviously if BottlePay themselves had a say in the matter, that they wouldn't de facto stop coin join users from depositing onto their service. They sort of have to play the game in the arena that they're working. It's a fully KYC'd service, right? And it's all UK only, but from what I experienced with the original product and what I've heard about the new one, it seems to be a phenomenal experience. But there's some realities in the world that we live in. If you want to operate in a certain manner, you just got to play the rules of the game, unfortunately. Is it always going to be like that? No, and we have a lot of work to do in ensuring that gets changed. But that's just not the rules of the game, the laws as they're in right now. It's not how they're written.
Yeah, I agree with Evan. That's a real shame, and I'm sure that the people who started that company do not like this. I can't speak for them, obviously, but I can't imagine that if you start a company like BottlePay that you'd be very happy about locking out CoinJoin users. So, I guess they have two options. They can presumably either stop operating, which hurts, their customers in a real way, or they can operate with this constraint. And that's a little scary because it kind of sets, I don't know about setting a precedent, but it certainly is a testament to this idea that now, CoinJoin coins are not as fungible as Bitcoins.
I would disagree with that.
Well, like in a literal sense, in the immediate term, if you're a BottlePay user, and you've coin joined, then it does make a difference. I think there's a lot of prospect long term for kind of doing en masse obfuscation that would result in the sort of redemption of the purchasing power of those coins on BottlePay. So I don't know. It's a real shame to hear about stuff like that. And you hope that there are some pretty obvious workarounds that people can use.
So, a couple of things that I want to say here. Appreciate both of your comments. I co-sign what both of you said. Actually, I think you guys pussyfooted a little bit too much, which is ironic because I was hoping you guys would go harder since I am actually, advising them. But I think, first of all, number one thing I want to state here is that every single sat I hold has a coin join history. I believe that Bitcoin, I believe that taint does exist, but it exists for non-coin joined Bitcoin. So I think that the only Bitcoin that doesn't have any taint it is, the only truly fungible Bitcoin is Bitcoin that has been coin joined. And I hold only coin joined Bitcoin. So I do stand with anyone who might have concerns about being able to deposit it where they want to deposit it, send it to where they want to send it. I'm in the same boat as you. Second of all, I have no intention of ever depositing those coins into a KYC service to begin with. I think KYC is the illicit activity. I understand that companies need to comply with regulations, onerous regulations. I like to see them push back on it. I think BottlePay is the type of company that will push back on it, but you have to realize they are a startup. They are just, a very new company who just recently gotten their licenses and whatnot, and licenses in the UK are a lot worse. So it's important to keep that in mind. I think that the only carve out I have for KYC services are an on-ramp. And in that situation, or an off-ramp, if you're talking about exiting shitty money, and in that concern, the way I look at it is if you have your fiat paycheck that has, your KYC fiat paycheck and your KYC fiat bank account, then you can use a KYC service to go into Bitcoin and then go into CoinJoin after that to try and reclaim some forward privacy. So I think in this case, it was a deposit, not a withdrawal. I think there should be a distinction there. I think it's more malicious if flagging is happening on withdrawals, if accounts get closed based on withdrawal history. And it's interesting enough, one of the newest services, Swan, doesn't even allow deposits. They're withdrawal only. And maybe that is a cleaner way for people to handle it. Another thing I'd say is I do appreciate that they just returned it right away, really promptly. They didn't close the account, which I think is a nice, if for what it is, that is like the best case scenario that you could ask for. And then last but not least, it is kind of interesting. They do accept Lightning deposits. So it's interesting how that is going to start factoring into these kind of things. Like where they're allegedly, and I'm really operating on mostly public information, to be honest, is their chain analysis tool, their chain surveillance tool says something's risky and they just return the funds. But it can't do that for Lightning. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic plays out.
Mm-hmm. I got a good question. Guys. Do you think there's any possibility of KYC as we know it right now being abolished before hyper-Bitcoinization?
No.
So we have a bit of a paradox in that, we're not going to hit hyper-Bitcoinization without services that can onboard, hundreds of thousands, millions of users in the form of like a BottlePay. And in the meantime, the users that do use these centralized services, they're more than likely going to be having to deal with these KYC regulations. So, it's really like a tough scenario. Like, you obviously don't want a BottlePay to be having to deal with all this stuff. Like, this news isn't good news, right? But at the same time, you got to understand that it's going to be services like this that are going to help us get across the finish line and bring Bitcoin to, the masses. So, there's some big dilemmas in that we're going to have to come to terms with as this thing grows and becomes more popular and we get more pushback from regulators in the state.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, do you guys think that, like, so I've been talking about this on RHR a lot. Randy McMillan said 2K markup on BISC right now. Few know, but on Citadel Dispatch, like 3 weeks before we hit 50K, it hit 50K on Citadel Dispatch live on BISC, just because of the lack of liquidity.
I know that's the thing, man. Is their order books are super thin. I love BISC. I want to support it, but goddamn, there is not a lot of volume on there.
Well, dude, you got to start somewhere, right?
You got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
this is why we shill it so heavily on this show. Yeah. But what was I going to say? Oh, so one of the things I've been talking a lot about on Tales from the Crypt is that I think that there's going to be an intermediate period where the KYC gets so bad that it essentially results in a situation where you can't withdraw, period. Like maybe like a few people can withdraw, but they'll make it so fucking difficult that in practice, it's like if you go through a regulated service, you just can't even really take self-custody.
Gotcha.
Are you guys worried about, like, do you guys see that as well? Do you see like a 3-year period, 5-year period, like the growing pains period where the Yellens of the world like extra freak out and they just, they just pull the plug and basically make it so that self-custody, is impossible to do through a regulated service or impractical to do through a regulated service?
I'm of a split mind on that, because I think you absolutely have to account for that or some other, 6102 adjacent event. But the thing that kind of eases my mind a little bit there is that it just seems like for the government to kind of unilaterally do something like that, the mechanisms are just, I think, too complicated, and the bureaucracies are too slow. And Bitcoin has a lot of friends at this point in government, in organizations like the SEC. So I think even if Yellen Treasury Czar wanted to do something like that, I think there is a far cry between that desire and the actualization of that through the means of the government, because it is a bureaucracy and because there are parts of it that are pro-Bitcoin. So, and because it's just such a blatant infringement of American freedom. So, on the one hand, like I want to account for the possibility there and be ready to weather it, but on the other hand,
Alternatively, James, last week the SEC just unilaterally decided that Americans couldn't trade 15 stocks. So how do you circle that square?
Whoa, maybe this is a piece of news I haven't heard about. Are you talking about the GameStop?
It wasn't just GameStop, though. There was a whole
AMC
list of them.
But that's a more nuanced thing. That wasn't the SEC, as far as I understand. That was the DTCC, which is a clearing firm.
No, last week. Last week was the SEC. The SEC suspended trading on 15 different stocks.
Oh, really? Oh, I missed that. I've been completely out of the...
They said they have the right to do that for up to 10 days without any kind of explanation. They said irrational social media activity was happening.
That's funny. Well, I mean, I guess is there the question in terms of my mechanical reassurance point. The question there is that was there law on the books that that gave the SEC that permission explicitly, or was that just something that they sort of decided was going to go? And I don't know the answer to that, but if there was some contingency in the law that allowed them to do that for securities, maybe that's one thing, versus if they just kind of decided to do it. Because I think anything with Bitcoin, which I guess is regulated by the CFTC more or less and is a commodity. But by the way, the CFTC is a much cooler regulatory body in my mind than the SEC. But yeah, I don't know the specifics of that, so it's hard for me to map that onto Bitcoin.
Yeah, Evan, I know you have an opinion.
Listen, everything that I'm seeing coming down the pipe, it's, they're trying to put more and more limitations on this thing and try to stifle it wherever they can, really. And, the politicians that are beholden to the special interests that really would stand to lose a lot with the proliferation of Bitcoin, they're looking at, not seeing that a ban outright is probably not practical. They're definitely looking at trying to throw as many regulations on this thing as possible to help stifle its growth. But at the same time, these are battles that, are in front of us. Their outcomes are not settled. And, it's going to be up to each and every one of us to try to push things in the direction we want things to go to. Listen, it's not going to be easy, but every passing day that we hear a new senator or House of Representatives member say they like Bitcoin or even cryptocurrency or hold it, every time one of these publicly traded companies say that they're adding Bitcoin to their reserves, things head a little more in our direction, and we have a little bit more hope. So after, seeing what's transpired this year with all the treasuries and the support we've gotten, I'm definitely much more optimistic than last year. But we all still need to be, just prepared for a huge, huge fight.
Totally. So to be clear here, this is something I've been worried about since I got into Bitcoin. Is one of the reasons why I always stack sats is because I thought to myself, I go, if I try and time the market and I sell, maybe I can time. I actually, wasn't that humble. I was like, I could totally time the market. I'm going to sell the top and buy the bottom. But what happens if when the bottom comes, I can't get back in, right? And this was a fear that I always had. And what I look at is I think it doesn't have to be an explicit law. And you see this with bottle pay, right? Is these companies are trying to limit their liability and their risk. And we live in this litigious society. And this is what we saw with the lockdowns, right? Is that even before you had laws in place that said that people had to close their businesses, those businesses couldn't get insurance coverage. And they were afraid they were going to get sued to fucking kingdom come if their employees got sick. Yep. So you end up in this heavily litigious society. And if there's overtures being made that people need to clamp down on self-custody, a lot of exchanges and services and on-ramps or exit ramps, whatever you want to call them, are going to just cut off. They're just going to cut off access just to protect themselves. But besides that point, James, I got the screenshot for you here. The SEC suspends trading in multiple issuers based on social media and trading activity.
Yeah, that's wild, man. I hadn't seen that.
That's fucking crazy. Like it's the writing's on the wall for people that these so-called free markets aren't really free markets, and the only free market that's available is Bitcoin. And if you think that they can't do this on Coinbase Pro, I mean, you're smoking the good shit, and I like to have some of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's another company worth shouting out, Card Coins, which is basically another kind of on-ramp. It's like a gift card exchange that's kind of booting up. The guys who run that are really, really, really solid Bitcoiners. So maybe, BISC is great for bidirectional liquidity, but if you're looking just to buy some Bitcoin, that's another good option.
But they have KYC, right?
Oh, I don't know about that. I didn't think so.
So anyway, no KYC only is just a really great resource if you're looking for a no KYC option locally. I mean, at the end of the day, like, unfortunately, let's be honest, a lot of this is going to be, especially in this like dark in between period, a lot of it's going to be like kind of, like a relationship with a weed dealer. It's going to be something that just you're going to have to like go out and seek, and it might not necessarily be that difficult, but it is definitely going to be more difficult than downloading, a sexy UX app on the App Store, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be different in different jurisdictions, but, it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility of it happening in the places we live. So, you got to be prepared out there.
I remember like when I first found Bitcoin, like the first thing that I thought was, was kind of like, I don't know, like, like almost like a Bcash or Logic. I saw it as like a utility token, and I saw this idea that you could send Bitcoin to someone in like Hungary or something, or someone in Turkey, and then they can just immediately go to the Bitcoin ATM and get like Turkish lira out or euros or whatever. And it was a way to basically transfer cash across borders. And then of course what happened was all the ATMs they started getting all these KYC requirements if they were going to feed out cash. Like sometimes they don't have hard KYC if you're buying Bitcoin, but they do on the opposite side. And it was funny because it was basically the education experience of why Bitcoin exists in the first place, is because all of these ATMs are run by centralized third parties. And if you have a centralized third party, they're going to get squeezed. They're going to be scared and get sent to jail. So they're going to have to comply. And the whole reason that didn't happen, and it hasn't happened yet to this day, is why Bitcoin has value in the first place. And it might happen in the future, but the important thing is that the actual network token, the bearer asset that we have, this digital bearer asset, doesn't have a centralized third party that can be squeezed, is super fucking important. Before we move to the next topic, I just, sometimes been in this space, been publicly talking about Bitcoin for probably too long. And I just assume that all the freaks are aware of CoinJoin and my usual CoinJoin shill. I think it's important for people to realize that CoinJoin is a Bitcoin. It's just a Bitcoin send. It's a Bitcoin transaction where you're sending Bitcoin in a self-custody way, in a non-custodial way. You're sending Bitcoin with best practices, privacy best practices being implemented at the same exact time. This is wholly different than this idea of mixing, or where you're sending into a custodial wallet and they're sending you someone else's Bitcoin. with CoinJoin, the equivalent would be something like 5 people have gold coins, and you all take your gold coins, you melt down the gold coins, and you create 5 new gold coins. Would be like what a CoinJoin transaction would look like if gold wasn't a shit coin. I think it's important for people to realize this distinction. This idea that we would inherently assume criminal activity based on using Bitcoin in a way that uses privacy best practices is kind of crazy to me, and I think it needs to be pushed back on hard. This idea, like, don't use like terms like washing and laundering, and these are terms used by the oppressor to insinuate criminal activity. Privacy itself is not a crime. There's nothing illegal about privacy in America. This idea that we're just going to insinuate that people that are seeking privacy are criminal elements is a ridiculous concept. It's a concept that needs to be pushed back against. It's a concept that's against freedom. And this idea that just basic financial privacy, wanting to have basic financial privacy, should not be something that the average person wants, that like you need to be like James Bond or fucking Jason Bourne, and you have to like delete your life and be like a crazy like secret agent man to have any kind of basic privacy, is like an absolute cuck mentality. It's a state mentality. And it's absolutely ridiculous. Like you shouldn't have to explain to someone why you don't want your employer to know what you bought at the bodega, and you don't want the bodega owner to know how much your employer paid you.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what's a bodega? Yeah, do people outside of New York even know what a bodega is?
Well, we know they have cats. That's all we really know about bodegas. But no, that's a really fundamental point, Matt. I mean, I think few people, maybe understand this idea that if, let's say that you make some Bitcoin transaction with like a dinky little convenience store, well, if that Bitcoin that you gave them isn't properly anonymized, then they can walk back and potentially see your net worth, your whole stash. And if they figure that information out, then what's to say that they won't track you down and rob you later on? So there are many, many, many very legitimate use cases for frequently anonymizing your Bitcoin. So yeah, thanks for the helpful subtitle there. Bodegas are small convenience stores.
Love to see it.
I wanted to say, like, so we're all former New Yorkers. Before we get to the next topic, like bodegas, man, I am so bullish on bodegas. Like the whole economy got completely destroyed. The bodega economy fucking flourished. They had the best business they ever had. They had their you couldn't find toilet paper in the big grocery stores. All the bodegas had toilet paper. They all had the essentials. They had their cat was standing by, ready to make sure that the mice didn't have corona. Like they were ready to fucking go. The bodegas are the most resilient thing about New York City.
Yeah, I mean, well, it goes into like how they got there. I mean, the people who usually work at the bodegas are usually the owners typically, and they're typically immigrants and probably some of the hardest working people in the city. So a lot of that goes hand in hand.
Bodegas are kind of decentralization incarnate in that they're all obviously shittier than a Whole Foods, but they're a hell of a lot more resilient, and so that's a big thing. Jane Jacobs was this woman, famous urban planner, wrote a book called The Death and Life of Great American Cities. And she's got like a whole chapter in there about the importance of a bodega and how it serves as kind of the backbone to many neighborhoods, because it's almost like, back in the days of old in New York, you would have the guy who ran the bodega, potentially take delivery of your packages if you were out, or hold keys for people. And so it was kind of this little opt-in source of trust that could kind of tie together neighborhoods. By the way, shout out to Raynard the Fox there. Miss you, buddy. Yeah, New York is dead. Long live New York, for sure.
Raynard calling you out because you said bodegas are worse than Whole Foods.
Yeah, I would debate that. I'm a bougie sellout. I I like my Whole Foods. I'll defend them to the death. I'll pay the premium. Indentured servitude to Jeff Mackey for good produce selection.
Well, he's getting fucking killed if you price his stock in Bitcoin, so he should try and figure out how to turn that company around. I'm kind of worried for him.
He would be the guy to do it too. He's kind of a classic libertarian, if I remember correctly. So he should definitely consider that.
Someone said today, I think it was Justin Moon, don't you dare call me a fucking libertarian.
Yeah, I think that's bullshit. I mean, I think you need, and I love Justin. I think you need, look, like labels exist for a reason. They're a convenience. If I say libertarian to someone, they at least have like a half hope of knowing directionally kind of where I stand. You know, I don't beef on that term at all. I think it's directionally accurate.
Yeah, I mean, relatively. I bet like Justin's definitions of it, I mean, things are always shifting, right? But it seems to me like more of like a capital L versus lowercase l libertarian situation where he's
he used the lowercase. He used the lowercase though.
Okay, that may be true, but I think it's more so like a response to the direction the party was trying to pander towards a lot of people on the left as far as certain issues go, and trying to distance themselves from a lot of the Republican ideology.
Well, yeah, I mean they're just sort of blue-pilled, and I think a lot of them, in good faith, try these tactics to kind of lure in people who are more moderate, maybe even more left. And I don't fault them for that. I mean, hey, like my confidence is still kind of low in general, and so if that's the tack somebody wants to take, if they're pro freedom, then go for it. I mean, do I think it's more effective to kind of participate in Bitcoin and evangelize that? Yeah. Do I think that they're mutually exclusive things? Like, nah. So we can have a little bit of that.
I mean, I think it's important to be provocative on Twitter. Like, if you're not being provocative on Twitter,
that's true.
You're probably doing.
Well, Matt, aren't you afraid that people are just like, in certain cases, going to write you off if you're too brash?
I think that's the point of fuck you money. Like lowercase Odell was a little bit worried about people writing me off, and I'm past that point, and now I'm just provocative.
Look, I am 105,000 a million % with you for a lot of the people who are like a lot of the financial punditry on Twitter. Yes, these people deserve to be relentlessly mocked for dismissing Bitcoin at this point if they don't have like a shred of uncertainty in their understanding. But I think, the general public, maybe I still have a little bit of sympathy for.
Yeah, I mean, there's a compromise. Like people are calling me mixed caps Odell now. Like I respond, I respond non-provocatively in lowercase to people that I think are actually asking questions, and I provide them resources to go and learn more. There's no one size fits all approach, but I mean, the blue check should be dealt with accordingly.
Absolutely. And nobody can debate that you are extremely caring. You take care of the nascent pre-coiners, I mean, like nobody can debate that. And I don't know. I think shitposting is great at this point, but
shitposting is fucking awesome. It's underappreciated. And let's be clear here. The richest man in the world figured it out. He's enjoying himself. And I think it's kind of cool that we live in the timeline where like he just doesn't even have a PR guy anymore. Like Vanity Fair is like reaching out to Musk, and he's like, fuck you, say hi to your puppet masters. And it's just like,
but it is a little bit, it's a total reflection of our times in that it's a little bit cynical and a little bit destructive that like, sort of the person who should be by the numbers, the most productive person in the world is basically like representing themselves with shit posts. And it's like this sad, it's like, this is what money has become. This is what society has become. This is fiat discourse, I mean, like, I'm a message board maximalist. I think like that was the superior form of communication.
James, I think there's two types. Like you should be two types of people. Okay, you should either be the gentleman who never is in the newspaper, and is super successful, and your name is never in the newspaper. No one knows who you are. No one knows your opinions. No one knows anything. Alternatively, if you are a public figure, you should just embrace the shit post and have a fucking good time.
Yeah, maybe there's something to that. I just wish there were more people out there who were firm in their beliefs and took actual stands. But I mean, had a little bit more of a genuine, articulate, kind of fleshed out approach. But we certainly can't expect that from the leaders of today's markets.
Okay, I agree with that. Okay, let's take it back to Bitcoin. The freaks are getting a little bit
sorry, freaks.
impatient. No, it's my fault. They're getting a little impatient with us. First off, Matthew Miller, yes, feel free to put any questions in the chat you want. We will try our best to get to every question that we see here. Don't be shy. Just keep throwing questions in there. If we don't bring it up, I probably noticed it, and we will get to it in the future. Big thing, Taproot activation. Everyone wants to talk about it this week. I think we have plenty of time to talk about it, to be quite honest. But I think it's very important to just keep on discussing it. We have this argument between lot equals false and lot equals true. This idea is lot equals true basically signifies that node that has this lot equals true flag will activate Taproot at a given date in the future. Lot equals false says that that I'm running the Taproot client. I would like to activate it, but I'm not going to forcibly do it in the future. I will go with whichever way the network goes. There's two arguments being had simultaneously. What does Core ship with as the default? What will you run individually? So, James, you're a Core dev. Let's start with you. How do you feel here?
All right. Let me just preface this by saying that I don't have much to say. I am not the guy that you want thinking about consensus parameters. I'm maybe barely the guy that you want doing like the plumbing on, the coins cache that has that maintains consensus. So I'm a carpenter. I'm not. There are big brain people who think about this stuff, like Anthony Towns and Suhas Daftar. It is not me. That said, my perspective is, look, lot equals false is a less presumptive approach because it allows for this idea that if we start the activation process and for whatever reason at some point during the year we discover that there is a problem with Taproot, whether that's like a technical implementation issue or something in the cryptography, it provides us a way of de-escalating, whereas lot equals true is a much kind of stronger assumption that this is absolutely the perfect thing. We know it's right. And I would challenge anybody who is really strongly advocating for lot equals true. Have you audited Taproot? Do you understand that code? Do you really have confidence that it's the right thing? Because I think a lot of core devs have looked at the code and think we understand it, but it's, why do you want to put yourself in a position where you could potentially discover some new information down the line and then not be able to act on it? So I'm not that qualified to talk about it, but I guess I'm a lot equals false guy because I just think.
Wait, are you lot equals false for yourself or for Core or for both?
For both. For both, because I think, look, if we get into a situation like with SegWit where, we have to start getting adversarial, then we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But otherwise, I think leaving the door open for the consensus process to just work, leaving the door open for the possibility of some unforeseen circumstance, I think that sounds pretty wise to me. And frankly, I think everybody should go out and read the Medium post that Suhas Daftar put out. Suhas is one of the founders at Chaincode. He was my coworker for a long time. He's absolutely, possibly the smartest person that I've ever met. And he makes some good points. He played a huge role in SegWit and SegWit's activation. So go out and read his Medium post, which, I think.
Where can we find that?
Should I shoot you a link or something?
Yeah, shoot me a link in the private chat. I'll put it up for everyone else. In the meantime, Evan, respond.
This is a crazy topic with a whole bunch of nuance. It has been, excellent to see the discourse going on IRC, especially on Twitter, on people's blog posts, on the Bitcoin dev mailing list. I really liked Luke Dash's post on the mailing list this week. I thought that was very interesting to get his perspective fully fleshed out like that. As it stands right now, I'm still leaning a lot false. I probably would say that I would like to see core ship that way. Whether I want it to be a configurable option in your Bitcoin.conf file, I'm still sort of up in the air about that. But yeah, I just like hearing everyone's arguments. I haven't definitively, decide how I'm going to signal, but I'm definitely leaning for sure in the false camp. I sort of understand the true argument in that, the miners have already indicated that they're going to activate it themselves, that they don't have opposition really to bring Taproot on. But at the same time, the information we have in front of us could change, and it's probably best to stay flexible. But yeah, there's these ideas of like being sort of, let's say, for lack of a better word, like equitable and allowing everyone to get their say in. It sort of at odds with the idea of like going down a strict path and having like a clean activation in some ways.
So I have since discovered, I just discovered that Medium breaks links if you do it all caps. So I had to repost it as a non-all caps version. And also I've discovered that YouTube, I discovered this the other day with my Mooch interview, that YouTube also, the link breaks if you go all caps. So shame on both of you as services, Medium and YouTube. That's ridiculous.
I enjoyed your conversation with the Mooch. I love that guy, man. He is, he's just
it's pretty unreal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, I will go back to that. We should have a conversation about that. I would love to have a conversation about that while we have you. But in the meantime, we need to talk about Taproot first. You guys are both being little bitches, okay? I think, first off, I think it's important that core ships with lot equals false. I don't think that we should expect core developers to, ship software with any kind of meaningful change. Mm-hmm. This is like a key tenet to Bitcoin. It's a key tenet of Bitcoin. This idea that if we have auto updates, then the person who issues the auto update is a central point of failure. That person can submit a malicious update, right? They can submit an update that adds KYC. I'm being provocative, or they can submit an update that increases the 21 million cap. Oh, God forbid. So we don't want auto updates, and we don't want updates that auto add a change, even if it's in the future. I guess that's better than an auto update, like an update that's like says, oh, in 6 months the update will change, but still the default should always be no change, no significant change, no, major change. So I agree that lot equals false, but I think what we need basically the threat of Bitcoiners that are potentially going lot equal true, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah. I think for myself, like I will probably, my node will probably be lot equals true.
Well, why is that? How certain are you in the change set?
Well, see, here's the thing, James. Like I can't verify for myself that the Taproot code is good. But I can check that you guys, there's been an amazing amount of due diligence on this fucking, addition to Bitcoin.
Agreed.
There's been an insane amount. And at some point, and it kind of comes down with the Corona stuff. Like at some point, there will always be risk. There will always be risk. And it's important that the miners know that there's this transgenic minority that might be activating the shit regardless, and you need to be timely about it. But I still think that officially we should let the miners approve the change. But in the back of their mind, they should always be thinking, oh, these dickwads are fucking going to go lot equals true, and we got to be concerned about that, right? It's important for that. And as a public Bitcoiner, as someone who honestly, I broadcast 7 hours a week. It's important that they realize that this guy is one of those people. Right.
But I think hey, look, 100% agree with that sentiment. I think it's important. There's a bigger point that's important to emphasize, which is just because I'm signaling lot equals false today does not mean I will not signal lot equals true tomorrow. And I think
just because I signal lot equals true doesn't even mean I'm running Taproot.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that messy aspect of it as well,
But I think, look, the reality is, I mean, the whole lot equals whatever discussion tires me out, because I think in reality, we've basically purged, like everybody who was going to bounced back, in SegWit times. And so this time around, I will really be surprised if we have any contention over the activation.
I think this is a non-contentious change, but I think it's important that we set up. We have to set. I don't want to argue about activation method every time we have to activate something. What I want to do is I want to have a clear activation path, and I like this idea that we have a single variable. You're either pushing it or you're going along with the group, or you're doing neither. So you have three choices. You don't upgrade, your lot equals false, or your lot equals true. I like this as a concept for all future soft forks. And I think it's important that we set up this process so that in any future soft fork, we don't have to fucking go through how is the activation method going to happen. We could just go through, are you not updating? Are you lot false or your lot true? And we can just proceed from that point of view. Does that make sense? Is that a valid thought process?
Well, and to be clear for everybody listening, like lot equals false does not mean you don't want Taproot. It just means you don't want a mandatory lock-in after a certain time threshold if the required threshold of miners isn't signaling.
Lot false means you're ready for Taproot, but you're not going to force shit, right?
Yeah, it's like the difference really between a miner activated soft fork and a user activated soft fork. Whereas LOT true is the flag day event that does UASF part 2. And really it comes down to whether you thought that the user activated soft fork in 2017 should be treated as a gold standard for upgrades. And, as someone who is leaning towards LOT equals false and is probably going to signal that way, like I don't think it was. I think there were a lot of things that were done in a rush manner because of the circumstances. I think a lot of things could have been done much more cleanly. And, we also need to consider that was a contentious upgrade that led us to, a plethora of forks. So, it's crazy in that, a lot of people still have the PTSD from the last upgrade in 2017. And, that's why people are a little bit on edge. But, generally speaking, we should be a bit more relaxed and, let the miners take the first step. And if they don't, we're not really putting ourselves into a corner. We always have the option of turning LOT to true.
No, okay. So this is where I fall in the middle, because I don't think, like, off the bat we go, I don't think this idea that we should just I think it's important that Bitcoin development is always conservative, right? And I think that we need to prioritize no change over change in every fucking situation. This is a feature, not a bug. It's hard to change by default. I think it's important to realize at the same time, though. So with that being said, I don't think we should railroad any kind of change. And Marty's a brother to me. The freaks have heard me week after week for the last 2 years, more than 2 years with Marty. And Marty has his tendency. Sometimes he's like, let's just fucking railroad this thing. Let's just fucking make it happen. And you have to be careful about that, because, we could railroad something that's bad. Like, how do we know if it's, what is a good change versus what is a bad change? At the same time, like, we have to be careful not to be fucking cucks about it. Right? Like, we have to like people, like, there needs to be a bit of a backbone here, and so I think off the bat, like, we let the miners signal, and I think the miners are just gonna fucking activate this thing, and then we won't even have to. It won't even mind. And I actually think that there's a good chance that the freaks know. I do have a bet where either me or Marty has to pay 1 million sats to the Human Rights Foundation, a great cause, to if Taproot gets activated January 1st. Marty says it's going to activate before January 1st. I say after. Yeah, James, you're good to go. Just fucking go for it. I say afterwards. But at the same time, like, there's a very good chance that miners just activate this and we just like fucking get it done with, and we don't even have to fucking, we don't even have to do this dick contest. I just think it's important that the miners realize. My point is, I guess my point is of this long rambling is that I think it's important that the miners know that we'll fucking play ball if we have to play a ball, right?
Yeah. So on TFTC this week, Matt, I think you had an analogy where LOD true is the user pointing a gun to the miner's head and saying, "Hey, it's gonna happen, right?" And in this analogy, what you want is that everyone to be packing,
right?
Their pieces if need be, if push comes to shove, but not to do it out the gate.
Right. I think there's people that are like, guns are bad, and then there's people like, we should point the guns at the miners, and I'm like, we should have the guns loaded and we'll point them at the miners if necessary, right?
Exactly. James just came back to our discussions like, why are we talking about guns?
So James,
no,
my metaphor,
my natural state is talking about guns.
Yeah.
So James,
that's true.
James, my metaphor was, I mean, you have a situation where you have people that are like, guns are bad. Then you have people that are like, we should just point a gun at the miners' heads and say, like, you have to activate this shit. And then I think I stand in the point of view where, like, we should have the gun loaded. We should be ready to aim it at the miners if we have to.
Yeah. And my thing is to overextend the metaphor is like, I conceal carry, and so we should conceal carry. Like, I hate quoting politicians, but like, speak softly, carry a big stick. Don't, try and. Oh
yeah, you quoted a politician who's been dead for like 100 years.
Yeah, good. Yeah. I was gonna say something that probably wasn't good to say on the radio, but yeah. So I guess, yeah, conceal carry. Your lot equals true.
So we had a question in the comments about why Luke thought that LOT false was a bug. James, did you get to read Luke's post this week from like Sunday?
I read like a few responses. I kind of skimmed the thread, as I do most mailing list posts. Luke's a little bit delusional. He makes some pretty insane claims in there. And in general, he like with Assume UTXO, he like multiple times misconstrued the proposal as being like hard coding checkpoints or something. And I've had to explain to him numerous times like the actual nature of the proposal, and each time he's gone, "Oh, okay, yeah, that sounds fine." So Luke's a little bit delusional, to be honest. I don't think what he wrote holds much weight in my book.
Yeah, I think he had some concerns about if we have users with both LOT true and LOT false activated, there's possibilities of the false chain being overtaken by the true chain as far as work goes. And he was also concerned, in a nutshell, about like the incentives, or sort of trying to second guess the activation and, just open up the avenue for users to act in like an unruly way and try to hold the grid hostage. That's what it pretty much was in a nutshell.
I think and I'm glad people are raising that point. He made some claim. I'll have to dig up the email that was just like really like kind of ridiculous. But no, you look, and I think it's good. Luke is like a good fixture to have in the community because he is a complete hardliner, whether it sort of makes sense or not. And I mean, he's kind of a hardliner for his own stuff. Like for a while, I don't know how much you guys have looked into Luke, but like for a while he was all on the tonal number system. And I think, which is like basically some alternate scheme.
He's still on tonal.
Okay, he's still on Tonal. Yeah, and I think Bitcoin
Tonal is
Knox,
the only number system that is a real number system. Every other number system is a shitcoin.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
16 or something.
It might be 16, and then there are weird names for each number in the Tonal number system.
I don't get it at all. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's how I would characterize some of what Luke believes.
It's beautiful.
And,
it's
yeah,
beautiful.
It is beautiful. I'm glad he participates in Bitcoin. I am
It's
pro
easier
engineer.
to do in a computer system because it's a multiple of 2. I don't know. Like,
Right.
I mean, shout out to him. I mean,
oh yeah, Luke is great. It's
a little bit offensive because he's been complaining about not getting developer funding, and I've been sending him money every month for the last 8 months or 9 months.
Oh yeah.
Through my GitHub sponsors bill, which uses dirty fiat to be honest. But I think I fund both of you guys. Do you both have GitHub sponsors? I definitely
You
fund
do,
Evan.
yeah, you do. Thank you, my man.
And I mean, number goes down on that if you price it in sats, like the amount of money I've been giving you guys. But
appreciate it, Matt.
yeah, but Luke is like one of the most successful Bitcoin developers on GitHub sponsors, and he always complains about not getting funding. But cheers to him. He just got a big funding round from Wasabi Wallet and Bull Bitcoin. So that's good to see. And that's for his work on Bitcoin Knots, which is basically a fork of Bitcoin Core that he maintains that also has a blacklist implemented, and it serves neutrino filters. I think Bitcoin Core now serves neutrino filters, but that was a big thing for a while. That Knots was the only one that did.
Hell yeah! Mm-hmm. So yeah, congrats to Luke. It's awesome to see. Glad to have you.
It's important for the freaks to realize that American HODL is not supporting Bitcoin developers the way he should be. So every time he flexes, it's important to let him know that he should support developers more.
Oh, that's funny. I hadn't realized.
That's the new flex. The new flex shouldn't be like posting your stack. It should be posting how much you're contributing to Bitcoin developers. What?
Hey, just trying to give back, into the community however you can.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason I contribute to you guys is so that you have to come on the podcast. James, Cold Core. We had Craig Raw, the fucking notorious Craig Raw, on the podcast last week. This guy's a fucking boss.
Big
he's talking
episode,
about dependencies. Yeah, he's talking about adversarial environment. He's talking about what is cold storage. Your cold storage is fucking hot storage. You think it's cold, but it's not cold. Why Cold Core? Shilla's Cold Core. Why are you working on it? Why should people even consider it? Why is what you're doing over there important?
Yeah. So the fact of the matter is, I really don't give a shit whether anybody actually uses Cold Core because I built it for myself. I love Cold Card, which is NDK's offline Bitcoin hardware wallet, and I use that personally. And I really hated having to set up a bunch of infrastructure, like Electrum personal server, using an Electrum client itself. Because Electrum's like a nice piece of software in some sense, in that it has a lot of features. It's pretty well written, but it's a massive project. There's a lot of lines of code and a lot of dependencies, and it pulls a bunch of stuff in. And increasingly, these software supply chain attacks have gotten more popular, where if you run a major software project, you have what are called dependencies, and basically that's just pulling in other people's code. So that you don't have to write it yourself. So for example, if I write any Bitcoin code, I'm probably going to have to run the SHA-256 function. Well, I don't really want to rewrite the SHA-256 function, so I'm going to pull in some dependency where that's already written for me. And over the past few years, we've just seen an increasing number of attacks related to somebody, finding. So you can go out, download the source code for some wallet, analyze the dependency graph of what they're using, and then find, some tiny project, which is like a dependency of a dependency of a dependency. take over that project, go to the maintainer who's probably like overworked and, last updated the code 6 months from now or 6 months previous, and say, hey, I want to take over your project. I'm going to be a good maintainer. And many people are totally willing to do this. And then you just embed some malicious code that says, hey, if I'm running under these circumstances, exfiltrate, the encrypted priv key file to this endpoint. And then all of a sudden, bam, you're compromised without even having realized it. And this isn't academic because it actually happened to BitPay's Copay wallet a few years ago.
Yeah, I remember that.
They got fucking wrecked.
Yeah, I mean, it was not good. And so anytime I was running Electrum, I would do so in a container. I would like take all these really sophisticated measures that I couldn't expect, that I myself could barely do consistently because they were so complicated. And I'm a fucking software engineer. So it's like, how could I expect regular Bitcoin users to do this kind of stuff just to have some, vague feeling of relative security? And so I said, okay, there's got to be a better way. And so I looked into it. And if you want to send and receive Bitcoin, you really don't need that much. So Electrum Personal Server is doing a lot of heavy lifting. That's basically amounts to indexing the entire blockchain and having an address index on hand for kind of any conceivable address that you might want. When the reality is that you really probably only care about your own wallet. And so given that fact, Bitcoin Core's modern RPC interface now, since version 0.19, lets you do pretty much everything you need to maintain your own coins without having to have this separate index and all this extra software. So basically, I wanted to write something that I could use myself and feel pretty good about and not feel like I had to spend half a day like resurrecting the setup whenever I wanted to do anything. And then I wanted to make something that would be sort of an entry point for people who are technical but don't have experience maybe per se on the command line. Because I think as things go forward, there's just, in the same way that everybody needs to become acquainted with public key cryptography and key management, I think people are going to need to become acquainted with the command line, because in many ways, it's really just the only way to be more sure of what software you're actually running. And the way that I learned the command line in Linux more generally is in high school, I was setting up media servers and trying to run Linux, and I was just like basically copy pasting commands that, I'd read in tutorials and kind of like learning the command line that way. So I wanted to kind of provide an avenue for people who are technical but maybe don't know Linux to start working in the command line. And I figured that cold core would be a cool way to do that while simultaneously minimizing the dependencies there. And so there's, you can either use a command line interface, or there's a little graphical interface, but within the terminal. So there's, so you're flashing a screenshot of that up right there. And
I
it
love
feels
the
kind of
the graphical interfaces in the terminal are like super happy.
Yeah, exactly. You feel, it feels cool using that stuff. I'm a big fan of that kind of thing. I mean, even being a jaded software engineer, it still gives me a little glimmer of joy when I crack open a terminal interface like that. So I wanted to write something that was cool, that was fun to use, but very, very simple, very readable, zero dependencies.
Is there zero dependencies?
Here are the dependencies. A Python interpreter, which every modern operating system ships with, and Bitcoin Core. Those are literally the only dependencies. There's no package manager. There's no install process. You literally just clone this single script, have Bitcoin Core running, and then run this thing in a terminal, and you're off to the races.
Indeed. Yeah, James, I've used it for Test Wallet, and it's a pretty smooth experience. I was really impressed with it. I really love how light it is, and not having any dependencies is like a huge win there. So right now it's single sig, right?
Yeah.
So you have plans to do multi-sig too?
I do have plans to do multi-sig. I've got to think about that and how to make that flow, kind of tractable and easy for people. And that's going to require a little bit more code. So I'm trying to think of if I can do it in a way that's like sort of an opt-in plugin, because obviously that's going to add some complexity and some code. And so I'm trying to figure out a way where you could just kind of layer that on top of the basic cold core. But yeah, that is something I'm thinking about.
But I mean, you're integrating directly into HWI, right?
No, I'm not even using HWI. That HWI requires dependencies.
Oh shit!
There are no dependencies in this map.
So it's not only is it single sig, but it's only cold card.
Only cold card right now. My claim is that if there is
that's fine by me.
Yeah, if there's another open source air gapped wallet, I will support it. I will build in the support.
Well, I mean, it already probably supports Foundation devices if they ever ship, because it's a clone, right?
Right, exactly. So yeah, but right now, cold card's the only hardware that meets those criteria, and so that's the only one I'm going to support.
You should ship a separate package and just call it Clone Core, and it's just the same exact thing. And just like as a troll, that's the Foundation devices one.
James, how about the Spectre device that they've got over? What's it called?
They call it Spectre, don't they?
I think so. Whatever.
They call it Spectre Hardware Wallet or whatever.
Yeah, have you taken a look at that one yet?
Crypto Advance, right?
I think I skimmed the README, and it's a DIY assembly process, right?
Yeah,
but they also sell it. They sell it pre-built.
Okay, yeah, I should give that a shot.
Absolutely.
It probably. I mean, it just uses PSBTs. It probably just works.
I'm sure it probably does.
As far as cold core is concerned, it's just taking a non-signed PSBT, and then it's constructing a non-signed PSBT, and then it's taking a signed PSBT and broadcasting it, right? That's it.
That is literally it. The only
if a wallet
specific thing is that we parse your XPub descriptor from a file that the cold card will output. But that is so trivial to add for other wallets.
If they use the same standard as cold card, which is a very easy standard to follow, and they just provide you with an unsigned PSBT, I mean, they have you construct an unsigned PSBT and then provide you with a signed PSBT, then they're compatible.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is really what we should expect from all hardware wallets. We shouldn't expect fucking James to change this software. We should expect them to just comply with an existing standard. James, there's a question from Ed in the audience. Do we need Bitcoin Core to be running locally to use cold core?
Mr. Ed, no, you don't. Well, so let me put it this way. You need Bitcoin Core running somewhere where the RPC interface is accessible, and that can be via the network. So what I do personally is it needs to be on, it could be, what I do is I have a Bitcoin Core instance running in a certain location, and I'm on my own WireGuard VPN. And so when I'm remote, I can access that Bitcoin Core instance.
So
and that's going
to the plebs, it can work on my node if you're in the same Wi-Fi. Like you're in the same Wi-Fi, you're in the same network. That means, as far as we're concerned, that's what local means. It doesn't mean that's on the same computer, right?
Yeah. So you need an instance of Bitcoin Core that you can access.
That's on your network.
That's on somewhere on your network, on your Wi-Fi. Yeah, exactly.
Evan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a dope project. I really like it so far, James.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I like it too. I use it personally for my mainnet funds. Maybe it's honestly there's no formal release yet, so caveat emptor, all that stuff. But there's honestly not that much I can fuck up because Core is really doing all the heavy lifting. So there's not a lot that can go wrong there, but check it out, give it a read if you know Python.
Look, I agree. If everything you're saying is true, then it'd be suspicious if you weren't using it yourself.
Absolutely, you got to stand under your own bridge for sure.
That's what I appreciate about you. At least when you got wrecked trading, you did it yourself.
There is a shabby nobility in feeling that by yourself.
James, it's important that after you did that I proceed to give you shit about this for years. It's going to be a long time. I'm going to make sure your kid is going to rib you about this. I'll make sure that he understands.
I'd be disappointed, man.
So, I mean, Evan, do you have anything else to discuss here about Cold Core, or should we move to the next?
It's a great product. I just want to see people
project
iterate on it more, and get a couple more contributors, and down the road get some multi-sig. I mean, someone asked lower in the comments whether we preferred Wasabi or Electrum, and I think for a single sig wallet, this blows the hell out of both of them. It's amazing. It's a great solution.
I like the idea of Cold Core. I mean, I like the idea of Core plus whatever you're using to interact with your Cold Card, because this idea that, I mean, you can use Cold Core in a prune node mode, right, James?
Yeah.
So like max, you're holding 10 gigs of space, and like honestly, like if you're going to be your own bank, like I think you can find a computer that has 10 gigs of capacity. Mm-hmm. Like that's fucking ridiculous, and I think you should find a computer that has 10 gigs of SSD capacity. So fucking do it, and you just have Core just straight up there, and you have whatever you're doing to interact with your fucking keys directly in between, and you make it happen. It's worth it.
Yep. So Ed's asking here, does it use the same wallet format as Core? Ed, the answer there is that obviously your keys still live on the Cold Card, and they don't, the Cold Core doesn't know anything about your private keys, which is why I feel comfortable kind of recommending it. What it does know about is your XPub, which obviously, if that leaks out, then there's some privacy implications. But Ed,
so you should use it with an air gap. It should be not air gap, but it should be a dedicated computer just for that, right?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I use it on my personal workstation because Cold Core will keep your XPub encrypted by way of the pass utility or GPG. So
you provide a password and that's encrypted by the password?
Yeah, exactly. So I do that. I feel fine with that.
So someone UTS9 asked, does Cold Card? Why can't I just use Bitcoin Core QT anyway? Because you can't use Bitcoin Core with the Cold Card unless you use HWI, which has a bunch of dependencies, right?
Yeah, there's like a long sequence of RPC commands that you can run if you know your XPub descriptor to do the right thing in Core and get equivalent behavior. But frankly, it's just not as good an experience. So I prefer to use something that at least has a little bit of an interface. And, I think the reality is like if asking people to run these really complicated RPC commands probably
it's never going to happen.
Yeah.
It's like 7 people. It's like 15 people are going to fucking do that shit.
Yeah. Ed, that wasn't a stupid question because in a sense, I didn't get around to this, but in a sense, you're sort of right because what Cold Core does is it creates a watch-only wallet in Core that corresponds to your XPub descriptor. So the keys still live in the Cold Card, obviously, but you do have a Bitcoin Core watch-only wallet that's watching your funds, and then Cold Core just like backs up to that.
I mean, that was a fantastic question. If you want to know stupid questions, like go on a Clubhouse, you can see some stupid questions over there. That was a very good question.
Yeah, they're not dumb questions.
No questions, freaks. If you ask a dumb question, we just won't answer it. But I really do. I fall in the camp of there's very few dumb questions. I will not say there are no dumb questions.
I've had enough of this India Pale hard seltzer that I'll entertain pretty much anything. So
there we go. That's what I'm talking about. James, I don't know if you're aware, but we kind of go hard on this show. So I hope you're ready.
I assume nothing else. If you're involved.
Okay. I mean. I'm pretty excited about your project here. I think it's an important one. I'm glad you're working on it.
Thanks, man. It was, like I said, it was very self-serving. And at this point, I'm my own satisfied customer. So there's a little bit of work to be done on the sending interface, but realistically, you shouldn't ever be sending anyway. So,
yeah, man, it's just really cool to see. It seems like the best projects in the space are people scratching their own itch. It's great to see you scratch yours and treat us to the product as well. So awesome tool to add to the arsenal.
So, I mean, that's like a question that like the majority of the people who join us here on Dispatch are open source contributors, maintainers, just in general, developers that are contributing to open source software. I'm trying to be more, I've been trying to scratch that itch. It's been hard for me, to be quite honest, in terms of my understanding of code. But on one side, like that, I've been very focused on is trying to facilitate funding of just open source development in general. And then this idea that free open source software doesn't have an easy monetization model. This idea that people should go for closed source because they can profit easier than if they go open source. Is a very dangerous mindset. It's a mindset that I wholeheartedly disagree with, which is interesting. We had the whole libertarian conversation earlier. It's interesting because some people might call it socialist, but I don't think it's socialist. I think I think it's viral. It's like this idea that you have open source code that can do all this fucking different things, and you can mold it into all these other different things is super powerful. Like it can't be stopped. It's like this amazing viral fucking loop. So now that I have both of you guys here, and I mean, you've dedicated yourselves. I mean, you both have separate jobs that pay your fiat paycheck and pay your fiat rent. But you both have dedicated yourselves to open source development. I'm really curious, and full disclosure, this is something that I'm working on with James himself to create a foundation to support free open source software going forward. So it's a very important topic to me. It's a topic that I plan to focus on even heavier going on in the future. But as two open source developers, I'm curious where you stand here. Like, should people be concerned that there's no real straightforward business model for open source? Should people be should we care about open source? Like, why should we care about open source?
Go for it, Evan.
Well, when you're dealing with something that could be as profound and important to you as your life savings, you want to have some assurances as to what code that those keys are passing through. So in our space, I think being open source is imperative, and I would never ever consider running a proprietary closed source wallet with any serious amount of funds, and there's simply no need to. As far as monetary models and funding models for open source projects, there's no denying that just going off donations alone is not really feasible for a project that can be done that needs full-time support and attention. I mean, it's just not going to work that way. But I think a lot of people are messing with new ways of thinking of it, not just charging for the software, but letting that stuff all be open and open source and have contributors contribute to it. But I think the important thing is going to be the other service you could potentially support if it's or provide if it's like a big service. I think Samurai is really paving the way for that, and doing a good job as far as making money off their Whirlpool fees while continuing to iterate on all these great tools. But it's not an easy answer as to keeping these things running. And while developers are trying to figure out what they could provide, how they could bring in money to keep the project going, I really do think that user donations are very important.
So, I mean, to just be clear here for the caption, I think people on Twitter see the caption automatically without hearing the sound, so they're more likely to click in if they see that caption. So it's a little bit of a clickbait. It's a little bit of a clickbait caption. And for the listeners of the podcast, my caption is "Open source devs will have fun staying poor." James, do you disagree with the statement on the subtitles?
All right, well, I got a few things to knock out before I get around to that. Number one, big thanks to Cantillon John for the funny comment about Cold Core reminding him of old computer RPGs. That's totally what I was going for. And a quick note about Matt, what you said, nobody should feel self-conscious for not being an open source dev. Because Matt, I think in many ways you do analogous work, but with wet code instead of dry code, which ultimately you can make the argument pretty credibly that that's socializing these ideas and making sure there's a community and distribution of information is as important as the sort of raw innovation itself in the code. So you're doing God's work, man. And it doesn't matter if you never write a line of code for Bitcoin, that goes open at all. If you keep doing the work that you're doing, that's, as or more of a contribution than a lot of the code that's written. So, I think, there are lots of ways to be a sort of quote unquote open source participant in Bitcoin. If you have a day job and you're busy and you are sympathetic to Bitcoin and you want to contribute somehow, hey, funding projects that you believe in, that's a great way to go. And I think thankfully we're going to have some really great mechanisms for doing that. I do use GitHub sponsors. And that's honestly when I opened that up and threw my page up, I was overwhelmed with the response. And, within something like 3 days, I had kind of met the goal that I had set out to raise, just to do nights and weekends work on core. So that's a really cool avenue. And I have found that the corporations here are at least give a lot of lip service to supporting development, and in many cases follow through on that. Coinbase is still lagging a little bit in my estimation, despite making a lot of noise about it. But did they fund somebody recently, or are they still just kind of saying we'll fund somebody? Do you guys know?
I feel like they supported someone.
No, they haven't funded shit.
I think, maybe they supported ProMag, but then ProMag withdrew. But anyway, the point is that, look, I mean,
the point is that they're going public at a higher, probably $150 billion valuation, and they've done shit all for Bitcoin development, and they've only accumulated $130 million worth of Bitcoin, which is honestly poor man status in compared to MicroStrategy. Some random ass .com computer company has more Bitcoin than Coinbase, so they can have fun staying poor.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'll sign off on that. I mean, as you guys know, as Matt knows, I have a very split brain take on Coinbase, because in many ways, I have Coinbase nostalgia for being one of the first exchanges.
I was wrong. I apologize.
Well, for what?
I Googled one of my favorite Bitcoin developers got funded by Coinbase.
Who?
You were right about ProMag, but the other guy I feel bad about. 0xB10C.
Oh, yeah, that was...
Dude's a fucking boss. I met him once at New York City Bit Devs. He's I love that guy. He's fucking awesome.
All right, well, good on Coinbase then for starting to step up.
No. Fuck Coinbase, but I like that guy. And I also apologize for being wrong about them develop. The only reason they did it was because Brian Armstrong got called out for being a racist prick and supporting selling surveillance software to U.S. government agencies way below market, pretending that he needed to recoup costs, even though they made over $1 billion worth of revenue last year, but they have to recoup the cost of $150,000 deal with the U.S. government.
Yeah, that's pretty sketchy.
So then he went on Peter McCormick's podcast, and when Peter asked me, he goes, Matt, how can I pressure this guy? The only really tangible thing you can do is have him support Bitcoin core development. So he did the least minimum amount that he could fucking do.
Mm-hmm. But Super Serial is raising a good point there, that fundamentally, look, in the early days, in the early years, Coinbase made it easy for people to buy Bitcoin, certainly easier than going to Mt. Gox, which didn't work out for the people who did that. So I do have Coinbase nostalgia. I hope they reclaim their greatness and delist all the shit coins, and but I'm not holding my breath.
Yeah, you'd be holding your breath for a long fucking time.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. Look, I bought a lot of Bitcoin off of Coinbase, and they sent it all to the U.S. government, and then proceeded to focus on shitcoins. I just wish Coinbase focused more on. I just wish Coinbase focused as much on privacy as they did on registering illegal securities. I just wish that was
Yeah.
there was like a balancing act there, but anyway, I'm glad they finally, after all these years, contribute to Bitcoin development. And I will applaud anyone who does that. I've said this on the podcast. We've applauded OKCoin and a bunch of other shitcoin exchanges for their funding, and I think it's extra important that we do applaud that, because otherwise we'll never have it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Social pressure works, freaks. Social pressure works. They tell us, Matt, you're just being antisocial. Like, why can't you just toe the party line? Why are you being a dickhead about things? And then they fucking do things because I'm a dickhead. Like, if I didn't have the meme that was like open finance and like DeFi, and like you just have like fucking the DEA raiding you with assault rifles, like they probably would not have funded core development. Like, you have to pressure them. They feel it. They absolutely feel the pressure. If you think that these human beings that run these corporations do not feel pressure based on social media, like, you're living in a whole different world. Like, it doesn't matter how rich you are, that notification ring comes in.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, look, I think there are individuals in these companies, maybe even in certain cases, the founders, who do feel personal desire to fund development. But fundamentally, at the end of the day, it's a marketing exercise. It's a marketing expenditure for the company. And so that social pressure is really important. Absolutely.
End of the day, it all comes down to your incentives, and we got to do our part to make you guys have the incentives to do the right thing, to push the space in the direction you want to see. So keep being toxic, Matt.
I'm not toxic at all. I'm welcoming. I'm just welcoming in a unquestionable way.
Toxic used to be the have fun staying poor. That was like the have fun staying poor of 2018.
I never liked toxic, to be honest. And have fun staying poor, I'm like a little bit questionable about.
I love have fun staying poor.
And as long as you don't abuse it and tell someone who's actually poor and you use it and responsibly, it's the best.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty hilarious when you tell like a rich person to have fun staying.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah,
absolutely.
That's it.
But on that note, like I think the most powerful thing about have fun staying poor is this idea that we will never have enough Bitcoin. So we have to have fun staying poor. Like, people think it's an outward meme, but really I think it's an inward meme. It's something that I have to just accept as a person, that I will have to have fun staying poor because I will never have enough Bitcoin.
I don't know, man. I think anybody involved at this stage of the game is probably going to have enough Bitcoin.
Yo, dude, I'm just trying to have fun staying poor. Can you just fucking chill the fuck out?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get in the way of you having fun staying poor. Throwing out the big H, Sean Stacken. Thank you.
What did Sean say? Sean's the boy.
Just his H.
H. Wait, he's gonna. There's no way you freaks can't make it happen. Like, you're just not organized enough. There's not enough of you in here, and you just can't. Like, I wish you could. It's a shame you can't. I hope that at 75K, you'll have the resolve to do it. Unfortunately, the freaks have gotten weaker because the price dipped a little bit. Here we go. We got an A.
Oh, the A's are easy. The A's always come. It's right around the like S's that you start to peter out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Evan, you got something to talk about? I'm trying to.
What do you guys want to talk about? We got some questions in the chat. We could talk Zeus dependencies. We could talk about L2. I saw there was.
I found it. I found what I was looking for, freaks. This is. This is what fucking did it for Brian Armstrong. He had no choice. I mean, really, ultimately, what was he going to do? He's just let me flex. He was just going to let me flex on him this way. Apologies to the freaks who are listening in the chat. The freaks that are listening via podcast. I am flexing on Brian Armstrong with my open. Oh, that was horrible. What is horrible? I have no idea what
BTC
they're
Pins has
doing.
just been trolling us this whole episode.
He's great.
Yeah, he didn't like your choice of drink. I saw him comment.
No, he didn't.
Yeah,
like
I mean,
that.
your choice of drink is horrible. I agree with him on that.
Guys, it
Here we
is
go.
better than
Let's
it
go.
sounds.
This is open finance powered by Coinbase. Like, how can Brian Armstrong not? How can he avoid this? Like, this is just. I destroyed him. I absolutely destroyed him meme wise on this.
You know, I would say he has no backbone, but I do think that the way he handled all the SJW uproar was pretty good. And
he handled it better than I expected. I was hoping I could weaponize it against him. Do you know that American Hodl right now on Clubhouse, he just immediately just says, like, don't use Coinbase, they're racist. He just like says it nonchalantly. Which is just fucking hilarious.
Well, I recommend people away from Coinbase because they so aggressively push.
But how powerful is this meme? This is like I get credit for a lot of memes that, like, honestly, guys, like, I'm not trying to own memes. Real memes aren't owned. The reason Stacking Sats is powerful is because no one fucking owns it, and I would never attempt to own it. This meme is so fucking powerful. Like, this just like. This sent shockwaves through the Coinbase organization.
That's funny.
Love to see it.
It's the trademark. The trademark on the bottom, powered by Coinbase trademark, fucking killed them. It just destroyed them. Like, there was nothing they could do about that. They felt it. They felt it hard. And then all of a sudden, they started doing community outreach.
So can we talk about price, or do you guys not want to talk about price?
No, we could talk. We have the price live stream on this show. People
so
love.
I want to know from
before
you
you start, James. Kobe and Ledger Status literally have a podcast called Up Only. They have a Twitch stream called Up Only. They get 8x what we get as viewers because the overwhelming majority of people all they want to hear about is price. That's all they want to hear about price. And I just want to say to all the listeners here, we're going to make way more money than anyone who's watching their stream. Okay. And the majority of people don't realize we're in the in group. We're just going to stack sats. They're going to try and trade like NFTs and all this garbage. And we're going to make more money than them. And that's fine. We don't need the engagement because we have the sats. Okay, James, continue.
Well, yeah, I totally agree with that. And what you got to realize is like that the moments that you make a lot of money, in Bitcoin and maybe in general in the world are not predictable. And so you just got to stack and sit tight because you just don't know when it's going to happen. And if you try and trade around it, as I mentioned earlier, you're just not going to make money. But what I want to know from you two is, A, do you have any firm sort of price targets for this cycle, or do you think that's silly? And B, do you think that there is this chance of this cycle being the last cycle, given that the marginal buyer now seems to be institutional and, by nature has stronger hands than in, say, 2017 when it was a bunch of retail, when the guy on your sales team, had CoinMarketCap up on his phone at lunch? Do you think this is a different thing?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Price targets. Let's start there. Obviously, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm really just going based on my gut. I do think we're going to have a monster year. I really do think we're going to have a similar situation to the last cycle where we have a crazy blow off top. I think it's probably going to happen in, late December or January as the tails get a little longer. I'm expecting... I don't think it's unreasonable to think that it's going to be at least a $200,000 Bitcoin. And I don't think it's unreasonable to expect it to hit $500,000 this cycle. But I do not think this is the final cycle at all. I think the drawdown may be a little less severe than the previous cycles, but I still think it's going to be quite violent. Definitely see us like going to 500K or something and then coming back all the way down to 100, or us hitting like 350 and us coming down to 65K or something. I think the cycle is still gonna continue. I mean, people are going to get greedy on the way up, and we're going to go up way too hot, and it's going to have to come back down to earth again.
I will, Evan, first of all, I love see, this is what pre-pandemic people don't realize. Like Evan's just nonchalant, just like constant tone. Like that's the tone we heard in the bars. That was like a very private tone. It was just like Evan has been drinking. He's talking about Bitcoin. He's just going to like a constant tone, and then nothing will change. This was like a very intimate thing that we got to feel in New York City, 2020. But look, this idea, the final cycle, like fuck you, all you people, like fuck you, like you'll know the top is in line when the general consensus is that this is the final cycle. Like I promise you, last cycle, I thought it was the final cycle. Did I think it was the final cycle up until 10K? No, I was very conservative. I was like, oh, we could just dump all the way down. It's pretty funny that Vinny called the top at 1100, but like we might drop down below that. Like no one knows. And I'm like thinking all these things through. And then once we passed 15K, I was like, hyper Bitcoinization is upon us. This is the final cycle. I do not have enough Bitcoin. We're all fucked. When we hit that point, you're going to hit that point, freaks. When you hit that point, that's the top.
Yeah,
that's when we hit the top. We're going to fall 70%, and Bitcoin's designed to pump forever. We're just going to continue to pump after that, and people who are humble sat stackers will be completely unaffected. Mm-hmm. But if you let your emotions get a hold of yourself, it's going to get fucking crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. Right, you're your own worst enemy when trading this stuff. So, and you think that it's the end and you don't have enough and you're feeling really greedy. You're trying to think that, you should be liquidating other assets you have in your life and then be doing it like now. Like that's probably when things are going to go.
The best is when you're like, your boys are like, I'm too late. It's too risky for me or whatever. And like, you're just putting in way more than your boys every day today. Like as it stands, like, what are they doing? Like, what's going on, guys?
Yeah. I know that feel.
And I tell them, I try and tell like the people I'm really close with, because like, honestly, for OPSEC reasons, you shouldn't tell the public. But I try and tell them exactly how much I'm putting into Bitcoin because it hits them hard. They're like, oh, fuck. I thought this guy was early and he's still putting in blank amount into Bitcoin and I'm just being a little bitch about it. It really does hit them.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, but listen, you can't kill yourself over it. You can guide a horse to the water, but can't make.
Well, I think it's a greedy incentive. Like I'm going to take care of all my friends and family. Like I will because I love them. So I would like if they could pick up some of the slack and just like buy some Bitcoin so I don't have to fucking spend as much on them. Like it's not a completely selfless thing. Like Twitter is more of a selfless thing. I would say the podcast is more of a selfless thing. When I show Bitcoin to friends and family, like I'm hoping that I have another 2 or 3 dudes to fucking pick up the slack with me when we need to handle Citadel medical expenses. Why should I handle that all myself? Like, it'd be nice if someone else could buy in at some fucking point.
Well, and you want people to feel like they succeeded and they made the decision and, they came along for the ride themselves and not like, oh, luckily my rich buddy Matt was ranting about Bitcoin. Like you want people to have made the choice to buy into this themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
Evan, I want to talk about how long have you been at Kraken for?
It's been since October, but
third time on Dispatch. We've never actually discussed it. Continue.
Yeah, I mean, it's really not been 100% approved yet, but you just let that cat out the bag. But yeah, no worries. It's been good, and hopefully I can talk about it a little more. What I'm doing behind the scenes soon.
Wait, you still can't talk about it, bro?
Still can't. It's I'll tell you about the process when I can, but yeah, it's in a little bit of a funny stage.
I fucking love
Sorry
this.
about that, buddy. I thought that was public.
I mean, James, in your defense, like the majority of the public Bitcoin industry is employed by Kraken. So
that's true. I had like maybe a
important to
50-50 shot. I might be working for Kraken and nobody knows.
Oh man.
That's fucking hilarious. I mean, we have James here. I think we need to continue. It's a Bitcoin Tuesday. It's a good time. James. So we're trying to kill Bitcoin.
Yeah.
We're a large government body.
Yeah.
We're not America. Let's say we're Russia or China.
Uh-huh.
How do we kill Bitcoin?
Well, I think you could reallocate some nuclear power, running some miners. You could supply chain attack Bitcoin. You could try and defame one of the exchanges by hacking it. You could, and the thing is, if you allocate a bunch of power to mining, you can basically DOS Bitcoin, but you can't, like a lot of people don't understand that if you have, say, a majority hash rate, like you can double spend in some sense, like in a limited confirmation sense, you can rewrite some amount of history, but not the whole history. And so even let's say that, Russia wanted to take over Bitcoin and spin up a bunch of nuclear plants, obtain a bunch of miners, which in itself is very, very difficult. A lot of people don't understand that there's a kind of scarcity in mining equipment. And as soon as you start trying to say corner the mining market, you're going to drive up the price of miners and make things really difficult for yourself. So
it's interesting that people think that's a negative.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a famous, sort of famous paper on kind of the amount of money that it takes to secure Bitcoin. And it's a sort of critical paper from the University of Chicago about the economics of Bitcoin mining. And in the paper, one of the kind of fundamental assumptions that they make is that there isn't convexity in the price of miners when you're trying to buy up enough miners to actually make a dent in the Bitcoin network, which is obviously false, because as soon as you start trying to buy up a bunch of miners, then you quickly run out of supply. And as you try and buy people's miners, they raise the price because they detect the scarcity. And so it's actually pretty hard to,
like right now, it's like it's pretty difficult to buy a single ASIC. Like I've been traveling between Airbnbs, and I came to the conclusion, I may or may not in my history have had to deal with I've mined to get KYC free Bitcoin. So I've decided that it's a great idea to do that again. And it's very hard to just source a single miner, right? And we're talking about sourcing 55% or whatever to attack the network.
Right. So I think that's just kind of a non-starter, not because you can't acquire a lot of energy, but because like you're going to see the mining market, go crazy before that happens. So yeah, I'm not so concerned about that. I think it's going to be, you could start to see more hacks against exchanges. You could start to see a kind of regulatory chilling effect. But you said non-American, right? So I really don't know that there's a lot that non-American countries could do at this point. I mean, America could obviously put a crimp on progress temporarily by doing something really draconian like a 6102 or just a kind of like, hey, let's make exchanges as difficult to use as possible. But even that's just a delay, as we all know, because the jurisdictional arbitrage will kick in and, serious Bitcoiners will go over to very nice places like, say Singapore or, other countries that have kind of favorable jurisdictions. So I'm not very bearish in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, come on. Like, do you think anything on that scale could be coordinated globally? And it's pretty much an impossibility. There's too many conflicting groups with competing interests. Like, there's no way you can have a worldwide ban that would effectively stop this thing.
And look, the S&P 500 owns Bitcoin, right? Tesla has 1.5 billion.
Well, okay, but I would argue. So first of all, the whole reason this question exists is because this is why I'm bullish on Bitcoin. It's because this is the angle I came from, right? The angle I came from was I thought it would fail. I thought it couldn't succeed, and I went through the processes, and I was like, "Oh my god, like this fucking thing's a hydra. It's going to continue," and that's why I jumped in. But to be clear, James, like this idea that these regulated companies that are holding Bitcoin in regulated financial institutions that are fucking KYC'd out of the fucking gills and have insurance companies and they're known, like they're not providing any cover for a self-sovereign private Bitcoin user. They are maybe providing some credibility cover where if they go after us individually, it's like you're going after someone who is practicing normal finance, which is owning Bitcoin. But this idea that Michael Saylor putting 90,000 Bitcoin in Coinbase custody or a competitor custody platform where he doesn't own his keys and everything is known, provides like any kind of cover for that self-sovereign Bitcoin user, I mean, I think is blasphemy. Like, I don't think that really is a thing.
Mm-hmm. You know, I want to actually add an answer, which is that if I was a foreign nation state wanting to attack Bitcoin, I would do exactly what Craig Wright's doing now, which is bringing these frivolous lawsuits against. Well, no, I mean, guys, kind of he hasn't, because if you look at the Hodl-Knot cases, if you look at Peter McCormick's case, they had to relent because the legal expenses got to be so much. And now he's bringing, these cases against some of the notable core devs. And like, just because his case is completely ridiculous, the UK's libel law is such that he can cost people in the millions of dollars, probably, just bringing these stupid, frivolous lawsuits. And so you might start to see that kind of action against individual devs with the intent of it having a chilling effect, which is something to worry about. And so I think like a legal defense fund is hopefully in the works for that kind of thing.
You think legal defense fund makes more sense than those developers like disappearing, coming back as NIMs?
Well, that's what I'm kind of thinking about doing, but and in the long run, maybe that's the way. But
like, to be clear, but to be clear here, like it doesn't really matter. Like when we're talking about legal arbitrage, like it doesn't really matter how effective your so-called nimage was, right? If we have one so-called central party that no one knows about, like let's say like Peter Wolla just like knows like James goes behind this NIM and this is his NIM, he just promotes you, and he just promotes you. He's just like, yo, guys, that's James O'Byrne, and like he goes and the next day he's like, oh, that's guy, and no one talks about it publicly.
Absolutely,
but like we can convert a lot of people over to NIMs. Yeah. And you can have like a semi-trusted centralized third party that we all already trust anyway, that dictates who is who, and you just like make that happen and you just switch over. Right?
Now the counterbalance there is that I couldn't have done what I did in terms of seeking sponsorship via GitHub if I didn't have my identity and the track record associated with it. So if I was to move to a NIM, I would have to rebuild that to a certain extent, which isn't not doable. But it is an impediment. And so, all this stuff is about making it marginally harder to contribute to Bitcoin. And I think the Craig Wright shit is unfortunate.
He's like the weakest attacker ever.
Oh, like, he's a moron. But
if we're talking about, but if we're talking about like what our goals are, right? Like he can go fuck himself. Let me be completely clear here. If you go back and you search on Twitter, the beauty of Twitter is a massive time machine. You go back and look at Twitter, like a week after Craig Wright pretended to be Satoshi, you have me calling him straight up a fraud. I use the F word. He never sued me. Why? Because I'm based in the United States, and he knows that if you're based in the United States, you're not going to get a libel suit that's going to fucking pass.
Yeah, we have libel laws in United Kingdom.
But I said it right in the beginning. It was very obvious, right? So like it's important that people are practical about this shit. And like I don't agree with laws and all whatever, regulations and stuff, but you have to like fly between whatever regulations are, whatever regulations. Yeah. But it was very obvious that he was a fucking scammer to begin with, and I don't think that he can ever have influence here. And anyone who thinks he has influence, I think you're short-sighted. Mm-hmm. And my point is that, yes, I think we should have some kind of developer defense fund, but it's like all this shit is messy. It's like, how are you supposed to have, like, who do you defend? Who decides who you defend? Like, all these things are messy. He knows that. Like, scammers know that.
Right.
And it's important. It's important. No. But the point is, it's important for us not to make ourselves more vulnerable to counteract some asshole, right? Right. And like, don't circle the horses and make people exposed and make people not NIMS just because you're trying to defend this shit. Like, fucking fight it, and we'll see where it goes. Like, these things, none of these things ever end up. One of the things, like people are fucking hilarious, man. Like, they go back and forth on all these different things. One thing I will 100% will always stand by is you fucking don't ever make a decision based on, I'm scared this thing will go to court. Like, fucking make the decision. If that thing goes to court, it's going to take fucking years.
Yeah.
It's going to take fucking years. You just fucking fight it. Don't be a fucking cop.
But
you just fucking fight it.
It takes money to fight.
No, but it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
You can be DOSed. You can.
No, but you can fight it at a minimum with nothing. You can fight it at a minimum with nothing, and it's going to take forever. Like,
no, it's going to be the expense of your time. If someone's saying that you might owe them, money or serve jail time, I mean, it's going to take your earthly time to address that claim in certain jurisdictions.
If someone in America wants to take your money in court, it will take them years, even if you don't have a lawyer. It will take them years. You can run them forever in America. I'm not saying in other countries. British has, UK has horrible libel laws. I'm not saying in the UK, but in America, if someone is trying to fucking string you out and take your money, you can run them in court for fucking ever. And this is something that Trump realized early on. This is like the Trump playbook. You just run them in court forever. You don't even, the thing is, Trump had like high-priced lawyers. You don't even need a high-priced lawyer. Like, you can just, as an individual, you can run someone in court forever. For like a long, when I say forever, I mean a long period of time. I mean like a decade. I don't mean like actually forever.
I personally do not look forward to having to do that.
No one wants to do that, but I'm saying if the time comes where you have to do it, you make them do it. Like, that's what we signed up for. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I mean, no one wants to do it. Like, that's ridiculous, this idea that someone wants to do it. But if we're in America and someone tries to fuck with us, and this is why, like, if you look at Craig Wright's lawsuits, he doesn't sue anyone in America.
Well, no,
because he knows.
He named a few core devs in America as defendants
recently. Recently. But he's desperate. Those American core devs, they can run him in circles forever.
Generally speaking, they should not worry on the same.
We can pay bare minimum lawyer fees, and we can run them in circles forever in America.
Yeah.
I think Holdenot was in Sweden, no, or one of those Nordic countries.
Their laws are shit. They have like horrible libel laws. Like, they can get fucked in a million different ways. But that's not America.
Right. Well, I hope you're right, Matt Odell. I don't want to end up wasting my fucking time in a.
Yo, I'll fight with you, bro.
Idiots.
Worst comes to worst, we pay him, but I'll fight.
Right on.
Is he suing you? He's not suing you anyway.
He's not suing me. No, I'm not. Me and John escaped that list.
Thank God.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that was just my point. That's all. Like, I'm just trying to. I don't think people realize these little things. These little things are what makes a place free and what makes a place fucking barren, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um. What else do we have here?
Well, I'm still drinking my India Pale Hard Seltzer. I don't really give a
Why?
shit about what anybody in
You
this
don't have
chat
anything
says.
else?
No, I really like this stuff. I mean, I don't know if it's that I haven't had an IPA
Is it American?
in a few years. I think it is American. Let's see. Yeah, North Haven, Connecticut. Stillwater.
Oh, Stillwater's good.
That's what I'm saying.
I've been to Stillwater pre-pandemic. It was a very good distillery environment.
So, all right, Evan, Matt, what do you guys think is the most important thing to be working on in Bitcoin at the moment?
Damn, that's a really good question. I think there's just like different domains of it. It's split up. I mean, you're talking about something like protocol dev stuff. I mean, we're really lucky to have this Taproot and Schnorr stuff in the pipeline, but we need to start thinking about what comes after that and what we need. And in my eyes, I really think we need something like multi-input signature aggregation. I think that really is a game changer. It's something that does take our privacy from, like a 6 to like a 9. I think that's really important. I think, the applications still have a long way to go. I'm really proud of the work we've done on Juice. You should be really proud of what's going on the Cold Core, but we still have a long ways to go on that domain. And, if you look at the numbers, the percentage of people that own Bitcoin in the world, it's still minuscule. We still have a crazy amount of people on board. We still have so much work to do in spreading the word. And, of course, Number Go Up is going to handle a lot of that and help facilitate that. But, there's the user education, letting users know what they should do with their coins, how to store them once they actually get into the game, how to point out these frauds and not get caught up in these shit coins. I mean, there's still so much work to do on all these different domains. And, we're all equipped differently, and we all got to figure out what the best way that we personally can push this forward.
Absolutely. Matt Odell.
I mean, it's pretty deep, bro. I'm curious. Fuck all this shit. I'm curious. What did you think about the Mooch interview that I had?
Oh, well, I gotta say, in general, I'm a big fan of the Mooch because I had such low expectations going in. When I listened to his Noted interview, it kind of blew my mind. I didn't realize what a sort of true believer he was. And if you just listen to the guy, I think it's clear he's not bullshitting. I don't think he's just some opportunist. I think he is actually a sort of libertarian at heart. And I think he kind of has a lot of the priors that make for a truly solid Bitcoiner. And I think he's going after it. And I love it.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot of great things on the interview. I think that fund is going to have a lot of good things going for it. I just hope that, they stay focused on Bitcoin and try not to dabble into.
Yeah, they are, though. That's the crazy part. The crazy part of this cycle is that we have billionaires that are just like, Bitcoin. I'm just focused on Bitcoin. I'm not focused on other things. Like, people don't realize, like, I disagree with so much things that Michael Saylor has said in respect to privacy and using Bitcoin and stuff. And I do agree with Rodolfo, who we've had on this show, say this exact thing, that, like, if you're going to attack the dollar, you're not going to be like, I'm attacking the dollar. You're going to be like, oh, I guess gold, a store of value. Like, you shouldn't spend it. You shouldn't do all these things. But regardless, my point is like this idea that we have like a billionaire that is like, I am obsessed with Bitcoin. I am just going to stack as many sats as fucking possible. I will take out debt and I will stack the sats. I will take my cash flow. I will stack the sats. I'm going to have a corporation fucking conference and I'm going to tell all those people to stack the sats, and like maybe Tesla will stack the sats. And he's just like constantly over and over again, just stack sats, and just like no focus whatsoever on any shitcoin or NFT or any bullshit or any ICO. Like that's crazy. Like that's crazy that we've hit that point since last cycle. Like that is not something that I expected.
Yeah. No, it's mind blowing. Sailor's a true hero. I kind of wrote him off when I saw the first Cyber Hornets tweet, but then if you listen to the guy talk for more than an hour, it is totally evident he completely gets it, and he's a great force for Bitcoin.
For sure. Yeah, I mean, things are really going well in that regard as far as like people trying to take their focus away from the old coins. I think you're going to continue to see that going the right direction as, you know, Ethereum, you know, still doesn't get version 2 out, doesn't transition to proof of stake, and has some staunch competition on its ass like Binance Coin. I think stuff like that's really going to...
That's hysterical.
Yeah, I mean, it's great. It's great to feel validated by that and to just be able to sit back and, you know, enjoy the popcorn on that battle.
Yeah.
I mean, we've been calling that shit forever. Like I said from the beginning, like, of course, the smart contracts are going to be ported over to more centralized forms to reduce fees. Mm-hmm. It is absolutely crazy to me that the Ethereum stakeholders decided that they were going to try and hit them with like Tiananmen Square and like all this shit. Like, to be fair, though, that is what Bitcoiners are going to have been hitting Ethereum people with. And like now they have nothing to stand on when the U.S. state eventually hits them with whatever thing that the Bitcoiners like decide to put on their chain. It is what it is. Like they're just gonna have to fucking deal with that shit.
Mm-hmm. So I feel bad. SM was asking for my price prediction. So at some point, I could
hit us. What's your price prediction? You fucking bear.
All right. Well, look. Okay, I am a fucking bear. But that said, I think one thing is obvious, and that's that Bitcoin is a better gold. So my price prediction is maybe for this cycle is basically just rough equivalence to the gold market cap. That's a little ambitious, but if you do that on the conservative end, like you get out about $300,000 a coin. So right. I think that's not unreasonable. And then as to the second part of my question, you know, is this the final cycle? What I keep coming back to is this idea that every Bitcoiner understands stock to flow, and everybody kind of thinks implicitly there's going to be a dump. And so I'm just wondering if we aren't going to be kind of surprised, and that if a lot of people aren't, if the price isn't going to hit 210. Yeah. Well,
let's talk about this, right? So, like, if it's last cycle, right, then we're talking 400K Bitcoin. Do we agree?
Yeah. I guess. I mean, well, I don't know if it's going to hit 400K, but like it might hit, say, 300K, and then you might dump, you know, quote unquote, dump to 250, and then everybody thinks that's the big dump, but it actually isn't, and it just kind of dips and maybe goes sideways, and then, you know, maybe goes up to 300, and then maybe just kind of like trends. I think maybe the volatility will dampen, and you could just kind of have it's like if Bitcoin, you know, if this follows a sort of standard technological S-curve adoption pattern, we might well be in the middle of the S-curve, and we might be well seeing, you know, the insane volatility that comes with that. But as soon as you get kind of, you know, you approach the later stages of adoption, which maybe we're not even near, I don't know, but things, you know, the volatility is going to quiet down, and it's just going to kind of hit a steady state of being a pretty high price. And so I don't wonder if a lot of people are going to get tripped up in the late stages of this cycle, you know, possibly selling when maybe, you know, there's not going to be as much of a dump as people think.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of people selling at, you know, the big mental roadblocks. Like I feel like there's going to be a whole bunch of people selling at 100K, and they're only going to corporations buy it up to at least 300. And
wait. I mean, so let's talk about last cycle, right? So we talk about last cycle. Last cycle went up to we went from $1,000 all time high to $20,000 all time high, right? So we're talking 20x, and the cycle after the cycle after that, our low, our high was 20K. So we go 20x from our high of 20K, and we're talking about 400K. Right. So we're talking about, if we're going to be the same as last cycle, we're talking about 400K.
No, Matt, here's
to
the thing to
70K. 70K bottom is like what last cycle was, right? That's
Here's
what we're talking about, right?
consider.
400K to 70K.
The last cycle was the first time that the entire world, saw Bitcoin pump and then dump. It was the first time everybody together experienced the cycle. And now that the knowledge of that process is in the collective subconscious, everybody's going to be saying to themselves, well, Bitcoin's just going to pump again. So why don't I just hold? Why don't I just forget about it?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think people should, but I'm saying, like, okay, so if we're talking about last cycle, we're talking about 400 to 70. We're talking about hitting 400, going to 70. And right now, we're at 50. We're less. We're at 48. Okay. So if you want to decide to try and be James about it and try and trade, consider that above 70, right? Like we're not at the point where even the people that say super cycle or say like this is the last cycle, like we haven't even hit the point where if you go by last cycle where we would bottom, right? Like this is people say to me like, Matt, you're supposed to be humble. Why are you all caps? Because this is the zone that you're all caps. Like this is the zone where I get to go all caps with like pretty much I get to do it with minimal risk, right? I get to do it with very little risk. If we go by last cycle, if we go by the cycle before that, like this is going to be a price that people wish they had, like under 50K. Totally. Oh my God, under 50K. That was so cheap.
Totally. Cantillon John makes a really good point that I'm even discounting the idea that despite the fact that a lot of the people buying now, are institutions with strong hands, that they are going to have mandates to rebalance as Bitcoin appreciates, and so there will be dumps that we kind of wouldn't necessarily otherwise expect. So that's a good point. Do you think so? Too.
I think like in the beginning they're gonna so Ruffer did that, right? They did it at like 32K. And we're at 50 now. Like, do they learn their lesson? Like, by the time they hit like 80K, 100K, 150K, do they learn their lesson? Like, do they like start to be like, oh my God, like, why are we rebalancing over and over?
I think there are. I mean, look at Saylor. Do you really think Saylor is going to?
Well, he's not rebalancing at all. I don't think he's going to rebalance buying at all. As much as possible. He's fucking addicted.
But this guy might want to be like, okay, I could offload some now and then buy in at a lower price and have much more sats. You don't know what I'm thinking. So
right, that's true.
I think we're going to see a mix of corporations who time it perfectly. We're going to see corporations who sell too soon and regret it. We're going to have corporations who hold the whole way down and then end up selling it in like a year and a half or 2 years. I think we're going to see like a wide array of different actions like that. And
what people don't realize is that these corporations are way more exposed to cash than the average person. The average person has no savings. The average person is a fucking failure. The corporations, they have large amounts of cash holdings.
Yeah, that is true.
Apple has billions of dollars of cash that they're just sitting on. They don't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Right? And so if this thing turns on them, they're going to FOMO in like fucking crazy. And this is not a manipulated asset. This is an asset that you could truly own, right? This is an asset that like if FOMO happens, like shit's going to get real fucking quick. Like I don't think people really this is why Citadel exists. Like people don't realize I am a very calculated individual. Like Citadel exists because
it's caps time.
What's about to happen is fucking ridiculous, and the probability of what I expect to happen is fucking ridiculous. Like, people don't expect it.
Agreed. I think it's gonna get really silly.
Yeah, and after this year with all the, as you guys say, money printer go burr, who knows? Like, it's really hard to even try to put a number on these things. Like, there's so many macro factors.
Right, and that's why, I mean, I feel a little conflicted about talking about price, because ultimately the reality is price is the ultimate indicator of success, right? But at the same time, at this point, price shouldn't affect your behavior. You should just be stacking and not spending, and that's my outlook. And yet, I remain kind of fixated on price, just as a sort of like, I like watching price charts because it's like the Bitcoin narrative is actually gaining adoption among people I never thought it would. And the reality inherent in the Bitcoin technology, which is basically the sovereign individual, like to see that take hold in the mainstream just blows my mind every time.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Matt just flexing with his Crypto Watch tweet charts here.
How good is the Crypto Watch tweet chart feature?
Pretty good.
Love to see it. You got to put that one on that said, Evan told y'all this is about to rip.
How good was that? You were fucking trashed. You were fucking trashed. I was trashed, and I just threw out all caps. Evan told you this shit was gonna pump. You should listen.
So, what else we got in the comments?
Yeah, a few Bitcoiners understand on that. I mean, it's been a good run. I mean, I think we can end it unless we have any kind of really good, compelling questions, freaks. You're here with us. You are the host. This is Citadel Dispatch.
By the way, if anybody checks Coldcar out, they want anything, need help, hit me up.
How can they contact you?
Some bandwidth. I'm at James OB on Twitter and GitHub, and all public inquiries should go through Matt Odell.
It's important that everything should go through Niraj before it goes through me.
Absolutely.
Cold card is great. Stack and forget. Will not forget, but it's just a peace of mind. Fact, yes.
Yep.
I mean, look, guys, I appreciate both of you. I expect both of you to come back on the show soon. I mean, fuck you, Evan. I mean, you've been on the show 3 times. So Evan will definitely be on the show soon. I expect James to be a constant pillar on this show.
Happy to come on whenever, man.
You're my boy. I miss you, bro.
Likewise,
so thank you for joining us.
James, you got to come to Miami, man. I'm serious.
Are you coming to Miami?
I'm thinking about it. I mean, I haven't taken out a Bitcoin collateralized.
No, dude, don't. Fuck you, bro. I know you're getting paid in fiat. Are you not getting paid in fiat?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, so use some of the fucking dirty fiat and use code humble 21% off until they cut me off, and you get 21% off. Fucking do that. We'll get you into the beefsteak. The beefsteak's the most exclusive fucking thing ever. Like, those tickets are not being sold. I love you, freaks, for being here with us, but you're not going to get those tickets.
Yeah, I mean, for like unruly favors.
But we can get you in, James, and join us. Like, stop being a little bitch. Like, it's gonna be a fucking great time.
I'm gonna come down for that. There's no way.
Bitcoin's gonna be like 200K per in June. Like, it's gonna be fucking ridiculous. I don't think people realize. People don't understand what the fuck is happening right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're really just getting started. I mean, it's sort of crazy to think that we're just under a $50,000 Bitcoin, and we really haven't even gotten into the meat of this run yet. So
I mean, we're talking about we're at 3K right now. It's 3K fucking February 2017.
Yeah.
If you want to be Vinny, you want to call the top, so be it. Like, we will fucking destroy you for the rest of your fucking life, and we'll just make that happen. But to be clear to both of you guys, both Evan and James, like, I will support you no matter what. Even if you guys fuck up, I will support you no matter what. But I appreciate if you guys could also lend a helping hand and be a part of it.
Thanks,
so
buddy.
thank you.
I'll try not to fuck up. That's my number one mandate.
Thank you both for joining us. Thank you for both your contributions to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going to rule the world. Thank you to all the freaks who have joined us for another Bitcoin Tuesday. Citadel Dispatch, man, like 11 episodes. It feels like yesterday that we just started this back in 2020, that whole year ago. We're fucking killing it. Let's go, guys. Please like and subscribe, all that other bullshit. With all the Citadel Dispatch things, you can do it on YouTube, you can do it on Twitch, you can do it on Telegram. You can just download the fucking episodes on fucking Keybase, and you can use all the podcast apps if you would like. Join us for RHR on Thursday. It is going to be fucking dope. It'll be absolutely lit. Marty will give me shit about coin joiners being blocked at Bottle Pay, so you need to fucking be there for that.